Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku was the elemental fox part 2. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 3, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝗳𝗵𝗃 from Wattpad. So let's start the video. Warning, BLD warning and cussing bakugo warning. I don't own any pictures unless stated otherwise. Action thoughts texting note Hanami's POV. As I opened my eyes I noticed that I was covered up. I was confused until I saw a note on my bedside table. Hey puppy, you fell asleep on me again. I didn't mind at all, so I covered you up. Then I checked on 𝗧𝗓𝗍 and I locked your door and left to go home. From Izuku. I smiled at the letter and got up and fixed my bed and went to shower. After I finished I put on my uniform and my black fishnet leggings. I brushed my long hair and put it in a long braid. After I put on my fishnet leggings I went to wake 𝗧𝗓𝗍 up. When I opened her door I saw her asleep with 𝗧𝗓𝗍 sitting on her bottom bed in her room. 𝗧𝗓𝗍, come here girl. I called to her. 𝗧𝗓𝗍's ears perk up and when she saw me she ran over with her tongue hanging out. Bark. Can you go downstairs girl? I'll be there in a bit. 𝗧𝗓𝗍 barked and almost toppled down the stairs. I turned to the sleeping 𝗧𝗓𝗍 and shook her. 𝗧𝗓𝗍, wake up and take a shower please. I have to fix us something to eat, I said to her when I was sure 𝗧𝗓𝗍 was awake, and in the shower I headed downstairs to fix some grape jelly sandwiches. After I fixed 3 sandwiches I put one in a Ziploc bag. 𝗧𝗓𝗍 then came downstairs dressed in her uniform. Good morning mama, she said with a smile on her face. Good morning 𝗧𝗓𝗍. I smiled at her. Is 𝗧𝗓𝗍 coming to school with us too? She asked, smiling. I look over to 𝗧𝗓𝗍 who tilted her head at the question. No sweetie, since we got the doggy door installed in the backyard we have to leave her home, I said with a sad smile since I know she loves the dog. 𝗧𝗓𝗍 walked over to 𝗧𝗓𝗍 and hugged the fluffy pooch who was whining. Okay, but when will the stuff be here? She asked me with a tilted head. Should be tomorrow. Until then I'm going to put your hair in a bun and put a beanie over your head, I said while grabbing a green beanie. I spent 10 minutes working on 𝗧𝗓𝗍's hair. Knocking sound. I'll be there in a second. Then I look at 𝗧𝗓𝗍. 𝗧𝗓𝗍, stay here, I told her so she didn't mess her hair up. She nodded and stayed still. I went to the front door and saw a green tuft of hair and I knew who it was. I opened the door and let him in and started to walk back to the living room. Hey puppy, where's 𝗧𝗓𝗍? In the living room. I was fixing her hair before you knocked on the door, I told him. He followed me because I know where I'm going. For once when we got back to the living room 𝗧𝗓𝗍's eyes brightened up. Papa? 𝗧𝗓𝗍 ran up to him and wrapped her arms around his leg. He chuckled and patted 𝗧𝗓𝗍's head but was careful to not mess her hair up. Good morning to you too 𝗧𝗓𝗍, he said to the happy girl. After putting the beanie over 𝗧𝗓𝗍's head she started to dance around with 𝗧𝗓𝗍. How does she have so much energy? I whined, kinda jealous. Well, she is still a kid and most have a lot of energy, Izuku said with a gleam in his eye. Mama? 𝗧𝗓𝗍 turned to me. Yes 𝗧𝗓𝗍. I said, did you make breakfast? I did. I grabbed her sandwich and gave it to her. I made one for you too, and I handed Izuku a Ziploc bag. Oh thanks puppy, he said to me after we all ate. We left the house after I locked the door. Then I put 𝗧𝗓𝗍 on my shoulders and held her legs. Let's get going, I said and started to walk. 𝗧𝗓𝗍 said, holding on to my soft hair. After we made it to Izuku headed to class while I dropped 𝗧𝗓𝗍 off at 𝗧𝗓𝗍's office. When I got to the door I knocked and after a minute I heard her come in and open the door. When I went in I saw Izawa and Midnight sitting in chairs. Am I intruding? I whispered. Not at all Miss Fuji, 𝗧𝗍 said drinking his tea. I look over to Midnight. Do you know how to dye hair? I asked her. She looked at me and looked away. No, and why would you want to dye that appealing white hair? She said looking at me. I chuckled. It's not me who needs it. I looked to the sleeping girl on my back. Midnight looked at 𝗧𝗓𝗍. Well sorry kid, I don't know how to dye hair, she said. I put the sleeping 𝗧𝗓𝗍 on the couch. If there wasn't one there is now, but before I left someone had a plan for me. Hey kid? Izawa stopped me before I left. Yes, I said and turned around. He started to grin. Scare the class and I'll give you extra credit, he said grinning. I look at him. So I can throw stuff at them and sling him around? I tilted my head. Request granted, he said taking a sip of his coffee. I smile and turned to 𝗧𝗍. Enjoy the show, I said and bolted out the room. After I got close to a window I transformed so I could sneak in. I'm not explaining how I got up here. All I will say is I sniffed a flower and blew up, in case you forgot. As soon as the window opened I made myself the smallest I could and squeezed under and got in, only to be picked up by a gentle grip I recognized and tried to get out of his grip. Now puppy, he whispered, if you're sneaking in to scare the class I won't stop you, but try to get to 𝗧𝗓𝗍𝗧𝗔𝗍𝗧𝗧 desk since it's a corner you can't be seen. Good luck. he said with a grin. I nod and noticed that half the class was staring at the vent while the other half was staring at the door. There ain't no way she's getting in without us noticing, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 proudly declared confidently. Unless she's already in here, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said. She can't be, we've been looking at the only entrances ever since Midoriya came in, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 said smugly. I snuck to Momo's desk and pawed her leg. She looked down and she quickly picked me up and placed me under her desk. How did you get in here? Did sensei give you this task again? She then pulled out a piece of paper and a pencil. I nodded and felt my eyes warm up and I started to write. Yes, sensei gave me this task and I got in through the window. I need someone to dye hair. Can you dye hair? I can't dye hair, but maybe Bakugo knows someone, she said, shrugging. I nod. Or maybe somehow he can dye hair. I grabbed the note in my mouth and sneaked past Minato and Izuku, who knew I was here, so I just walked past him up and up to Bakugo. I pawed his leg. When he looked down, I swear I saw amusement in his eyes. He picked me up and sat me under his desk. How the F did you get in this time? He asked me. I dropped the note and he picked it up and read it. Yeah, I know how to dye hair, but who needs it? I wrote one word that should make him understand. Airy. He looked at me and nodded and blew up the notes. Then Ida ran over with his arms swinging like a robot. Bakugo, please refrain from using your quirk in class. Ida said. That was when Aizawa came in, but Ida started talking. Sensei, I think Fuji Hanami is absent, he said, making his arms go crazy. There is no way she could have got in. We watched both entrances, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 declared proudly. I then felt a familiar eye-warming feeling and started to lift stuff up and then picked up 𝗵𝗃𝗃. Guys, he said. Yeet, 𝗵𝗃𝗃's floating. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 screamed. I lifted chairs up that had people in them and made them go around in a circle with them screaming. Aizawa just watched and smirked. I started to get a little dizzy, but I could still move stuff, so I started making pencils fly. Sensei helped, Ida said, as he was the next victim to my homemade merry-go-round. This is a test, find the source. He smirked and sat down in his chair, drinking probably 5th serving of coffee source. Uraraka said confused. Wait a dang minute, Fuji-san, stop it. Mina yelled in the air. I stopped and dropped everything and came out from Bakugo's desk. That's when everyone saw me. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. They screamed. How did you get in here? 𝗵𝗃𝗃 shouted. I transformed back. I came in through the window, I whispered shyly. Ida then decides to speak. We're in the 2nd story of the school. How did you get to the window? He yelled at me. I looked at the class, mumbled, I sniffed a pretty flower and sneezed out this pink sparkly dust, and it blasted me up to the window. After that I glowed blue for a second. That's when Aizawa stood up and looked me in the eye. Wait, did you say glow blue? He asked me. I nodded. I guess your quirk is evolving again. He sighed. The class looked at me again. They shrieked, settle down class, today we're going to be doing rescue training with All Might and another facility member, he said, holding a sign that said rescue. He grabbed a remote and pushed a button and our suitcases with our hero costumes came out the walls. Get changed if you want to, you can wear your gym clothes, but if you wear your costume you'll get used to it quicker, he said, leaving the room. I grabbed my case and headed to change in a stall. After I was done I transformed and grabbed the parts in my mouth and walked out looking for Momo, but she was already gone, so I went to look for her leaving the changing room. I was at the bus looking for Momo. I went into the bus and found her, so I jumped on her lap and dropped my costume, then huffed at her while everyone else just looked at us confused. Okay, I'm sorry for leaving you, I'll help you now, she apologized as she said that she made a brush and started to brush my tail. Momo, may I ask a question? 𝗵𝗃𝗃 asked her. Sure, 𝗵𝗃𝗃, what is it? She said while brushing my tail. How are you brushing her? She runs away from everyone. He pointed at me. This got a lot of attention. Whoa, she's actually on your lap and not Midoriya brothers? He looked at me along with the class. Momo looked at me while brushing my puffy fur, going to clip the collar around my neck. Well, I earned her trust, and she needs help one last time with her costume, she said. What do you mean last time? 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 asked. As soon as Momo clipped the collar on, I knew I could answer him. I turned towards 𝗧𝗵𝗃. Well, my costume is suppose to fuse after wearing it the 2nd time, I said. Then what's your human costume look like? Toru asked me curiously. Like the hero who rescued me 1 month ago before the entrance exam, I said. This caught the attention of some people. Why would you need saving? You're strong. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 shrieked. I looked at the floor. I wasn't always strong when that hero rescued me. He gave me hope along with someone else. Why would you need hope? 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 asked, probably a lit afraid of an answer. Because this hero fights quirkless. Until I was attacked I barely used my quirk. I could barely even use Iron Tail. Back then I know barely any combat, but I was determined to protect who was with me. I couldn't let them get hurt. I said quietly. So what happened? Toru asked curiously. Well, before I transformed I told who was with me to get help, and they did, but when they got there I was slammed into a brick wall. I saw some people's eye widen. Who saved you? Mina asked me. I looked secretly to Aizawa, and when he nodded, the erasure hero, underground pro hero Eraserhead, I said smiling while pointing at her teacher. Our homeroom teacher saved you. Kirishima shouted. That's when Todoroki popped in, looking down at his phone. Eraserhead is a pro hero who works at night. What were you doing out at night? He narrowed his eyes at me. I was taking the person with me to celebrate. I whispered out loud. Celebrate? Denki said confused. I nod. Their quirk is special and they couldn't control it, so I offered to help them and I did. That's very nice of you, but what kind of quirk do they have? Kirishima asked. I turned to them with a straight face. For their safety I'm not saying I'm sorry. I apologized. No, it's so manly how you want to protect this person. Kirishima said. I nod. As Momo finished clipping my skirt on my nose, suddenly felt itchy again. Pink dust came out of my mouth and I started to glow blue again, and I felt a little dizzy. Aizawa. The class shouted, looking at me. He shot his capture weapon straight at me and tried to erase my quirk. I guessed it worked because I stopped glowing. I shaked my head and realized my feet were off the ground and looked down. To me, a small animal, this was too height for me. Panicking, squeaking and yipping sounds. I felt someone grab me and I recognized the green hair, so I just flopped on his lap. Midoriya? Tsu said. Ah yes, Azui. He said call me Tsu, and I say what's on my mind, and I wanted to say your quirk is a lot like All Might's. She said as I felt Izuku tense up, so I rubbed my head on his hand to calm him down before he gives himself away. Well, think about it, Tsu. All Might doesn't break his bones. Kirishima said. I guess you're right. Tsu said. My quirk allows me to harden my body. It's not very flashy for a hero, Kirishima said as he hardened his arms. Izuku then decided to intervene while I was enjoying the head pats. No. Kirishima, your quirk is perfect for hero work, Izuku said to the redhead. If anyone has pro quirks it's Fuji, Todoroki and Bakugo, Denki said as Tsu decided to add something. But Bakugo has a trashy attitude. I doubt he'll be popular, she said bluntly. Why you wanna fight Toad? He shouted at her. We're here, get out and stop playing around. Aizawa said. I jumped onto Izuku's head as he started walking. Soon someone in an astronaut suit came over. Uraraka started to fangirl. Oh my gosh, it's Pro Hero 13. She squealed. Izuku started mumbling, so I hit him with my tail softly. Sorry, Hanami. I nodded at him to assure that it was fine. Hello everyone, some of you know me, but let me introduce myself. I'm Pro Hero 13. As 13 started their speech, my senses were telling me something was about to happen, so I took stance, causing everyone to go on alert. I flicked my ear in a frenzy. Hopefully Niza figures out something is wrong. Good call, Fuji, Aizawa said to me, but I don't know if it got through. All of the sudden, a purple portal appeared with a baby blue-haired male with hands all over him. And with them on their right side I saw a blackish-purple monster with its brain exposed. On the left I saw a winged version of the other one, but it was less bulky. Oh cool. You have fake villains too? Kirishima asked excitedly. No, those are real villains. He turned around and put his goggles on. 13, get the kids to safety. He shouted. Mr. Aizawa, your quirk and fighting style ain't suited for this many villains. You usually use the element of surprise, Izuku told him, a little nervous. Kid, you can't be a hero with one trick, now go. He yelled and jumped down and started to take down villains one by one. We watched how he fought. Until Ida yelled at us, come on Midoriya, Fuji. Ida screamed at us. Izuku caught up with the class, but the mist man appeared. Hello, I'm Kurogiri and we're the League of Villains, and today we're here for 2 reasons. 13 stepped in front of everyone. Why are you here? 13 shouted at him. We are here to end the symbol of peace and we want her. She has a very valuable quirk. He pointed to me, but everyone stepped in front of Izuku, who was holding me closely. Like hell you can have her. Bakugo shouted at them. As soon he said that, him and Kirishima launched at him, but he engulfed most of us in his portals. I am here to scatter all of you. You all will suffer painful deaths. He said. I was engulfed in the purple smog and I realized I was where Aizawa was, and villains came running at me. I swinged my tail hard in it. Circle and big stars came out. It hit some of the villains, but I know I couldn't take them all by myself. She's the one boss wants, but we can't get close to her. One of the mini-villains shouted. As they kept coming I noticed that some were sneaking up on me, but I couldn't do anything. A scarf knocked them down and I saw Aizawa standing over me. What are you doing here, Hanami? He yelled worried teach, he missed man said that they were after me he worked me here. I said scared Izuku eyes widen, I didn't know why until I was almost hit by the giant bird but I was pulled out of the way by Izuku's scarf. The blue hair male started to talk to Izuku. My name's 𝗵𝗃 Shigaraki and I'm here to kill All Might and get our prize, he said while scratching his neck. What do you want with me? I yelled at him, I've been tracking you for a while. Ms. Fuji, your cells and DNA would be of use to us. He turned to face the wingless bird monster. And you get her but don't hurt her, we need her in perfect condition. The 𝗵𝗃 charged at me and tried to grab me but I transformed back into human and secretly pulled my gun from behind my cape. I drew them myself. But I forgot the tail. I put the GPS tracker bead in the gun and aimed at Shigaraki's leg. A gun won't kill me, try your best 𝗵𝗃, he said cackling. I look at Izuku and show him the tracker bead, and he smirked, those can't be removed unless by a doctor, right? He asked me quietly. I nod, we'll be lucky if he doesn't have one because we could follow him. I said I'll distract him then you shoot him in the chest or shoulder. I smirked, never thought you would say that to me sensei, hiding a recorder behind my back. Just shoot him Hanami, he said sighing. I nod and ran closer to Shigaraki but I then took notice that 3 of my classmates were in the bushes. I snap out of it as I saw the 𝗵𝗃 snap Izuku's arms. My blood boiling I went for a shot at the crusty dusty man-child. I aimed and shot the gun. The sound it made ringed in the area. I didn't have time to recover because I was thrown into the ground and held there by the 𝗵𝗃. But I noticed that Shigaraki was bleeding through his shoulder, which means that I hit my target. I transformed to try and get loose but the flying 𝗵𝗃 threw me into a tree, but I wasn't gonna give up. I focused on both the 𝗵𝗃 and felt my eyes get warm, and the 𝗵𝗃 was now about 50 feet in the air and couldn't move due to psychic. What 𝗵𝗃, get her, we need her. Shigaraki whined like a kid. I noticed my control was breaking so I picked up Izuku and moved him closer to the 3 in the bushes, hopefully understanding what I'm doing. When my control broke I was hit by the winged 𝗵𝗃. I slide across the ground, my head hitting the ground hard and the skin ripping and my fluff collecting a bunch of dirt. I heard a snap and saw my leg bone poking out but the adrenaline was too much right now for me to care. The winged 𝗵𝗃 was circling me while the wingless one was walking towards me with a hand reaching out to grab me. I could barely stand until I heard the door slam open. Students! No need to fear because I am here, All Might screamed. I felt something cold near me so I looked up to see Todoroki put an ice wall in front of me to freeze the 𝗵𝗃 arms. Just in time Izuku ran up to me and Todoroki, are you okay Hanami? He asked me. I look over to him and try to speak but my translator was broken. I felt my body get warm and 2 blue ribbons started to come out my body and wrap around their arms. I felt my body grow without me doing anything. My ears were tingle and my neck also felt weird. My legs got skinnier and my tail was getting bigger. Pretend that all the people in there aren't there. I don't own the GIF or the picture below. When the blue light bursted I felt stronger and taller even though I felt like I was almost half dead. I saw a puddle of water so I looked in the water to see what I looked like. I had a mix of pink, blue and white fur. My eyes were still the same but my tail was now pink and a whole lot fluffier and longer. And on my ear I had a white and pink bow with 2 ribbons, and on my neck was another white and pink bow and also had 2 ribbons with blue on the ends. I noticed that the winged 𝗵𝗃 was charging right at Izuku and Todoroki so I got up and formed to protect as soon as the winged 𝗵𝗃 was close enough to cause damage, and I used my newfound ribbons and grab a hold of its beak and body in place. Pretend 𝗵𝗃 is the 𝗵𝗃. I started to swing it around in circles while the others were dealing with Shigaraki and the wingless 𝗵𝗃. I was dealing with the other 𝗵𝗃 alone with a broken leg, a possible concussion and an open head injury that will definitely need stitches, but my adrenaline is what is keeping me going. The 𝗵𝗃 soon started to look very dizzy and I threw it to the ground. My ribbons glowed pink and the mist I was sneezing earlier came out at high speed towards the 𝗵𝗃 and sent it flying. The winged 𝗵𝗃 was flung back into a portal that appeared in front of it but the wingless one was still there. 𝗵𝗃, kill him, Shigaraki said pointing at All Might. As soon as the 𝗵𝗃 charged was when I wrapped my ribbons around All Might's waist and moved him out of the way. When All Might saw me his eyes widened. Young Fuji. He asked to make sure it was me. I nodded and tried to speak 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗃. Your limit is done 𝗧𝗵𝗵. I can't understand you without your translators, he said looking at my head. He probably noticed my injuries. I used my ribbons to point to the wingless 𝗵𝗃 and made a throwing motion. Yeah, I don't think you could throw that one if you tried, he said, and sweat dropped at the thought. Soon as the mist man tried to do something, Bakugo blasted out and tackled him to the ground. 𝗓𝗓𝗏 also arriving. Don't try moving or they'll be cleaning pieces of you in here for weeks. Bakugo said, grinning. 𝗓𝗓𝗏 then popped up. That's not very hero-like, Bakubro. He saw Izuku was happy they arrived, but I saw what Shigaraki was planning, so I ran towards Bakugo and used my ribbons to grab him and put up a protect at the last moment. Boom, Kaken, Hanami. Izuku yelled. Bakubro. 𝗓𝗓𝗏 screamed. What? The smoke disappeared to show a glowing 𝗧𝗏𝗃 shield, but they saw ribbons around Bakugo's waist that pulled him out of the way. All Might then started to talk. They are kids and you're going all out on them. He yelled at Shigaraki. Well, I didn't really have a choice. The plain-looking one went at me with intent to kill me, and the one that has anger issues took our warp gate. Not to mention my prize has finally unlocked a tiny bit of her quirk's power. Look at the way she threw my lovely 𝗵𝗃 super far. What about this? Give me my prize and I'll leave. He tried to negotiate with him and I backed up a little. All Might then took a step in front of me, like I would let you take a student from my care. He screamed at him, furious, I'll get her soon. My 𝗵𝗃 was made to take you on at 100%. Its shock absorption and regeneration quirks are the perfect way to defeat you, and then I'll take my prize. He started cackling like a psychopath as soon as Shigaraki commanded the 𝗵𝗃. It charged at all might. You said shock absorption, yes. Well, that just means I need to go beyond my limit plus ultra. As soon as he said that, he sent the 𝗵𝗃 flying out of USJ, but after the smoke cleared up I saw he couldn't move anymore or he'd transform back into 𝗧𝗏𝗃. What are you waiting for? Scared? He said to Shigaraki. All Might has took a lot of damage from the 𝗵𝗃. If we both go at him we could kill him, the mist man said. Shigaraki turned away from All Might. No. He started to smile creepily. I want my prize. He turned to me and started to run towards me. I was way too tired to move. My legs were shaking like a newborn, plus the broken leg from the throw early practically is forcing me not to move after my adrenaline faded. Not to mention my head's literally split open on the side. I tried to move but winced at the creak sound my leg made. Get away from her. I heard someone yell. Izuku rushed around him and tried to hit him, but the warp man blocked it, and he had a hand heading towards Izuku's face, so put the last of my strength and extended my ribbons and grabbed Izuku by the waist and pulled him away. Then a gunshot rang through the building, shooting Shigaraki in the hand. I looked up to see Snipe with the staff and Nizu. Kurogyri. Get us out of here. Shigaraki yelled. He looked over to me and Izuku, and the boys must have saw that because they were circling around me. Don't worry, my dear prize. I'll get you soon. He said, cooing at me. I shivered at the creepy man. When they disappeared I fell to the ground, breathing from exhausted. Hanami. Izuku yelled, now that they're gone we can get 𝗵𝗃 in here to help so we can move her. Todoroki said, looking at me. 𝗓𝗓𝗏 volunteered to get 𝗵𝗃 and Izuku went to check on All Might, but will probably get sent to UA with him. Todoroki and Bakugo was by my side until 𝗓𝗓𝗏 came running in with 𝗵𝗃. 𝗵𝗃. 𝗵𝗃 was speechless when she saw my new upgraded look. She then walked over and started to make some purple koban. Now I'm going to try and wrap it until we get back. I nodded at her. As soon as she touched it I howled in pain loud enough for everyone to hear, so Present Mike came over to check on us with a worried look. You kids all doing good? He asked. 𝗵𝗃 looked at me in confusion. It shouldn't have hurt her, that's odd, she mumbled. Present Mike looks over at me in confusion. Who's this? He said, and I thought he was smart. I used my ribbons to write my name in the dirt and covered my ears while avoiding my head injury. To the others' confusion, Hanami. What happened to you? He shrieked. I point to my neck with my ribbon where the translator was shredded and barely hanging on my neck. Oh well, we'll need a new translator, and can you two move her closer to the entrance so we can carry her up? I don't think she'll be moving with that leg or a bone sticking out. Yamada-sensei. 𝗵𝗃 sighed. Yes, Ms. Yaoyorozu. He replied to the black-haired girl, I could make an animal stretcher so two pros can lift her and walk up the stairs. I don't want her moving on her leg or even touching it. If it hurt her, that okay. #protective 𝗵𝗃. How will a stretcher go upstairs? Todoroki asked her, confused. She turns to Todoroki with stars in her eyes. Animal stretchers come in different shapes and sizes, and Hanami is about the size of a medium dog. And can you ice her leg when we get to the stairs? 𝗵𝗃 asked him. He looked at my leg and nodded. 𝗵𝗃 finished with the stretcher and called over 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 and Present Mike over and asked them to help move me on it after she wrapped my leg. Not my photo. And ain't the puppy cute? Pleading face. When she finished they got me on the stretcher and 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 and Present Mike picked the stretcher up and walked up the stairs. Then Todoroki iced my leg after we got to the top, and they carried me outside. I heard chatting, so I decided to say something even though no one will understand me except Koda. It was tragic. And I was used as a ragdoll. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 my classmates immediately looked over as I was being put in an ambulance, and they cut the broken translator off. Present Mike started talking to the ambulance person. Can you send her to UA? Recovery girl will fix her up. He said to her. The ambulance person nodded. Of course, we'll give her some sleep pills on the way since her head injury looks bad. But then the ambulance person turned around to face me. If you want, you can bring a classmate for the ride. I nodded and used a ribbon to point to Momo. Okay, I'll be right back. A few minutes later, Momo was running over waving at our classmates and got into the ambulance with me. Time skip. I woke up to see Momo sitting on a side chair asleep, so I guess I made it. I was now in Kyo's office, and just then the door opened and Chiyo came in with a box in her hand. Hanami, you're awake, Chiyo said as she walked over with the box. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 I can't talk. I know you can't talk, so I went to Power Loader and got you a replacement translator until yours is fixed, and now before I clip it on I want to talk to you about your injuries. She said, looking at me. I nodded, ready to know if I actually did crack my head open. Chiyo grabs a clipboard. Okay, you broke your back leg, but I reset the bone and healed that. Your head was split open. I was able to fix it, but you'll still be dizzy for a few days. You'll also have a small pain in your head for a few days as well, she informed me. Then she clipped on the translator so I could talk. Anything else I need to do? I asked her. Chiyo looked at me. Well, dearie, I need you to try and change back to EV form. You'll also need a name for this form as well. I think about my fluffy cloud white form. I felt myself shrink, and I opened my eyes to see cloud white fur. Okay, now try human, Chiyo asked. I nod. I felt a little bit of pain, but I was able to transform back. Any pain, dear? She asked. A little, but with what we all just went through it's expected. I said. Oh, and 3 people are here to see you, Chiyo informed me. Oh really? Can I put Momo on a bed first? She laughed. Of course, dearie. I focused on Momo's aura and felt my eyes warm up, and I laid her gently as I could on the bed. I turned to Chiyo with the blanket still over me because I was a little cold. You can let them in now, I said. She nodded and opened the door. I recognized all 3 of them. Hello Izuku, Yagi and 𝗃𝗃𝗃, how are you all feeling? I asked them politely. I'm doing fine, young Fuji, and Izuku is better thanks to recovery girl, but how are you? He asked me. I looked at him confused. I'm not sure mentally, but physical I'm good. I didn't have much wrong with me. I said. 𝗃𝗃𝗃 took the clipboard and read it out loud. Then they all look at me like I killed someone. I'm very confused. Why are you staring at me? I asked them. 𝗃𝗃𝗃 sighed, then looked at Yagi and nodded. Hanami, do you know anything about that person from USJ? 𝗃𝗃𝗃 asked me. I shook my head. No, I don't, but he said something that scared me, I said, looking down. Truth, and that is? I looked up from the floor. He's been tracking me for a while. He mentioned something about me being valuable to them, about my DNA or something. I'm terrified, but I need to stay strong for Eri. I said, thinking about what would happen if he got a hold of her. Truth. 𝗃𝗃𝗃 perked up at the little girl's name. How is the little girl anyway? He asked me. Well, I'll have to disguise her as my literal kid for a while, but Izuku is technically her father. She calls him Papa and everything, I said, smiling. 𝗃𝗃𝗃 turned to Izuku. You better take care of them. He said to the green-haired boy. I will. His eyes were shining determination, and he turned back to me. I'm here to ask some questions. So Mr. Midoriya, you're dismissed, and come get your girl at the end of the day. His face turned a little red but nodded and whispered in my ear one thing before he left. Bye for now, puppy, and walked out the door. My face was probably a tomato, and the other 2 raised an eyebrow. It's nothing. Can we start the questions? They both laughed and nodded. Time skip. After the questions were finished, we all had some animal-friendly tea and cookies. Then they left, but I got 𝗃𝗃𝗃's number in case of an emergency. Hey Chiyo, where is Eri? I asked her. She's with Yamada. When she saw you being rolled and she started to cry, so I told her to go with her uncle and you would be okay. Can I see her? I asked her. Of course, I'll call Yamada and he'll bring Eri to the office, she said, already at the phone. After a few minutes later, there was a knock on the door and Yamada peeked in. Someone order a kid named Eri. Yamada tried making a joke. I laughed a little. Well, I did, causing them to look at me. Mama. Eri busted through the door and ran to my side crying. As soon as she was close enough for me to grab, I picked her up and put her on my bed, and she looked up at me with teary eyes. Mama, are you okay? She asked me with big teary eyes. I'm fine, sweetie, it is nothing big. I'll be dizzy for a few days. I look at Yamada. How's Shota? I asked with a slight pain in my head. Chiyo flipped through some note before talking. Aizawa suffered facial and arm fractures. His orbital floor has also been crushed, but he was stubborn enough to not have any brain damage, so he's lucky. She looked at me. Yours was worse than your own teacher. I should whack you, but I would cause you more pain. She lectured me as long as she did for Izuku on the first day of school. Eri looked towards Chiyo with teary eyes. Will Uncle be okay? She asks with tears in her eye. Yes, dearie, he's too stubborn to die, and because of that he will have a good recovery. She reassured Eri. Eri nodded and stuffed her face in my stomach. I realized I was still in my hero costume. Don't I need to change? I asked, confused. The ambulance people couldn't get your costume off, so they left the costume on and removed the shredded items. I turned my head around to see Momo wide awake. Ms. Yaoyorozu, you're awake, have a nice nap. Chiyo asked the black-haired girl calmly. Momo turned to Chiyo. Yes, I did. Thank you for letting me stay with Hanami. She thanked the old lady nicely. Eri decided to lift her head to look at Momo. Ms. Momo, she said with excitement. Momo turned her head to see the 5-year-old. Eri, how are you doing? She asked, happy to see the little girl again. I'm great since Mama is okay, Ms. Momo. Eri said excitedly. Me and Momo were talking since Eri fell asleep on my stomach. I was still laying down. Yamada had left to go to a meeting or something. So what caused your injuries, Hanami? Momo asked me. Momo, did you see those things they brought with them? I asked her, a little terrified, thinking about those things again. Yeah, I heard Todoroki call them nomus. What about them? She looked like she put the pieces together. I looked her in the eyes. It was those two things that threw me around like a rag doll. If that evolution in my quirk didn't happen, I would have been hurt worse or dead. I shivered at the thought. I started to explain to her about what I understood about the Nomu. Wow, but I never saw the winged one get arrested, so who fought it? She questioned. I did. I had no choice. It was after me and my adrenaline was still there, so I decided to swing it like how it did to me, but the warp villain made a portal that took the Nomu somewhere after I threw it. I said with a wince. Hanami, is something bugging you? I look up to see worry in Momo's eyes. I nodded. Then you can tell me and we can do something about it, Momo said with a soft voice. Momo, we can't. The person at USJ literally said he was tracking me. I'm terrified and I have a daughter to take care of, and what if he finds that out? He'll try to use her. I covered my mouth. So that's what's on your mind? Momo looked down at Eri. You have pro-heroes as neighbors and you have a new form with restraints. If he tried anything, just do what you did with that Nomo, just throw him. She swung her arms in a yeet pattern. I nod. But ding, my phone went off, so I checked to see who messaged me. Received from Bakugo. Are you alive? I bursted out laughing and showed Momo the text. Well, it seems like someone cares about you. She said with a smile. Yeah, but he did say he'll help me dye Era's hair. I said with a smile. He did? She exclaimed. I nod and reply sent to Bakugo. Yeah, I'm alive. And Momo, and is anyone with you? Received from Bakugo. The class in the classroom worrying about you, cause apparently you were almost as bad as our teacher. Your boyfriend is rubbing off on you too much. Sent to Bakugo. I was actually worse than our teacher. And what boyfriend? Received from Bakugo. Wait, worse? And you're all still not official. Sent to Bakugo. No. But I do know he loves me. He accidentally said it before I fell asleep on him, but I was waiting for him to say it. Received from Bakugo. Okay, but can you send me your address so I can get Squirt's hair done? But why do you need to dye her hair? Sent to Bakugo. Can you get to the recovery girl's office with Izuku? Received from Bakugo. Just asked and I'm on my way, but Deku slipped away, so expect your dumb boyfriend to get there before me. I put my phone away and heard a giggled. I looked to see Momo making a bird plush and handing it to Eri, who was now awake. Thank you, Ms. Momo. She said, holding up the bird plush. Just call me Momo, she said with a gleam in her eye. Okay, Auntie Momo. Eri cheered. I heard the door open, but I knew who it was the moment they whispered into my ear. Hey puppies. I turned my head to see Izuku. I smiled. Hello Izuku, I said with a smile. Papa? Eri bolted and jumped into his arms, almost knocking him down. Hey Pumpkin, where did you get the bird from? He questioned with confusion. Auntie Momo made it for me, Eri said with a smile. Did you tell her thank you? He asked softly. Yes, I did, Papa. She stated, proud of herself. Knocking, I turned to the door and saw an angry Bakugo. Deku. He screamed at him angrily. Why, what kaken? He smiled, but I saw the glint in his eyes. He was amused. You literally just smacked your face into your desk and bolted out of the room when I asked if we could head to recovery girl's office. He said, raging. Hello, Mr. Baku. Eri said with a big smile. He probably just realized Eri was here and snatched her from Izuku's hold. Are you mad at Papa? She questioned. Yes, I am 𝗧𝗵𝗲. He said, not even one bit sorry. Why? She tilted her head. His recklessness is rubbing off on your mom, he said with an angry tone. Eri then looked at Izuku. Bad papa. She chided. Yes, say it 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 bad papa. He cheered her on. Me and Momo just watched for the next few minutes of Eri and bakugo ganging up on poor Izuku. I decided to step in. Enough lecturing your dad, Eri. I'm sure he's learned his lesson, plus it's my own fault for being stupid, I said with a smile. Ah, okay. But you're not stupid, she said. And bakugo, you asked why I needed to dye Eri's hair, right? I asked him. Yeah, we all know you hate hair dye. He said it like it was the most obvious thing on earth. I pull my phone out and click on the picture I took of Overhaul and showed bakugo and Momo yesterday after school. I ran into this villain and he's the one that Eri ran from, but he knows I have a kid after I mentioned having a quirkless kid. Why did you say anything? He was about to lecture me until Izuku popped in. 𝗵𝘃𝗃. This villain is known for being the boss of a Yakuza group called 𝗧𝗵𝗧𝗃𝗃. Most people would have slipped a lot more. Info. Hanami only mentioned having a quirkless kid and Eri's not quirkless, so we have to hide her identity by making her look like she's her actual kid. He said, now having a mumbling spree. But do you even have hair dye for kids? He asked me. I ordered hair dye yesterday and usually they get there a day later, I said, happy I ordered it. Bakugo sighed. Can you and 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗏 be at your house tomorrow? He questioned. We looked at each other. Yes, school's cancelled anyway, Izuku said with a smile. I nod. I don't plan on leaving my house until school starts, I said with a scared voice. They both looked confused until Momo popped in. Shigaraki was tracking her before school even started, not to mention her fighting a Nomu alone, and being a ragdoll. Hanami has every right to lock herself up in her house, Momo said, looking at me with worry in her eyes. They both look at me shocked that I didn't tell them, but the more people who know, the more people to worry. Chio then came in. School is over and Hanami, the principal, wants to speak to you in the meeting room for something, she said, looking at me. I nodded and grabbed Eri from bakugo. See you tomorrow. I'll text you my address later, I said, and then I went to the principal office. While Eri fell asleep again, I opened the door to the meeting room to see the staff and Nizu in a chair. Oh, Hanami, can you take a seat with Eri? Nizu asked politely. I nodded and took a seat next to a gray-haired man. Nizu cleared his throat before speaking. Today's attack was planned by a man named Tamura Shigaraki, but the police station couldn't find anyone by the name, and he admitted he was after someone. Nizu said, frowning. Why is she here? The man I sit next to said, because Fuji Hanami of Class 1 is who he was after today. She fought back and sustained critical injuries worse than her own teacher, but recovery girl fixed her up, and I don't want harm to come over her child nor her. But I wanted to ask you about who you fought and if you used the item in your hero costume I gave you in your secret pocket. He asked with a brow raise. Wait, that kid's hers? 𝗧𝗃𝗃𝗏 screeched, gesturing to the sleeping kid. Yes, she is, and I did use it, I said, grinning. Use what? Midnight questioned. I pulled the cube from behind my skirt and it transformed into gun, and I grinned. You shot him? Present, Mike said, concerned. I shook my head. I had permission. I pulled out the recording device and played it. I never thought you would tell me to do this, sensei. Sai, just shoot him. Everyone was silent until the gray-haired man stood up and grabbed the gun and inspected it. Kid, how the heck did you get your hands on a GPS gun? He said, shocked. I pulled the GPS device out of the back pocket. I had 𝗍𝗧𝗏 get it for me. I shot him with one, so if you hurry you could apprehend him, I said with a positive voice. And why are you still in your hero costume? 𝗧𝗃𝗃𝗏 asked. Well, I never got time to change, I said honestly. Well, are you still gonna disguise Eri? 𝗍𝗧𝗏 questioned me. I nod. I ran into him yesterday. I pull out my phone and put it on the table and gesture for him to look through the phone. As he did, his smile turned upside down. Miss Fuji, I was thinking about this and now I'm positive we need one, but I was thinking about dorms, 𝗍𝗧𝗏 said while writing down something on a piece of paper. Like turn UA into a boarding school? I asked, uncertain. He nods. If you run into another villain that's after you, I'll need you and your daughter to move into UA security. But back on topic, do you know why Shigaraki is after you? He questioned me with a bit of worry in his voice. I shook my head. He said something about my DNA and cells, not to mention he said my quirk ain't fully unlocked, and I'm starting to believe that. I said, looking down at Eri's sleeping figure. What do you mean? The gray-haired male said with an eyebrow raised. 𝗍𝗧𝗏, do you have another translator? I asked, since I took the one recovery girl put on me off and left it in her office. He nods. I do indeed. Why? I guess none of you saw my form at UA besides 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗏 and present Mike. I said as I got off my chair and put 𝗧𝗓𝗏 in the chair. Okay, I'll transform. I don't know what to call it, but I know it's powerful, but I have to be in EV form first. I said with unsureness in my voice. I transformed into EV and jumped on the table and focused on the pink creature I became. I opened my eyes and saw the teachers turned away because I was glowing blue and felt my body turn a bit bigger and my ribbons come back from my bows on my body. When the light bursted, the teachers looked back and Midnight somehow pulled out a piece of candy and held it out to me. I extended my ribbon and grabbed the sweet treat and plopped it into my mouth, and 𝗍𝗬 held up a translator in his paws. Vlad, could you snap this on her so she can talk, and Fuji, can you stay on the table? He asked kindly. 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗍𝗔. As you wish. After the man known as Vlad snapped on the translator, I felt weird and tried to speak. Hello. Is it working? I asked, unsure if it worked. Yes, it works. Do you feel any pain in this form? He asked. No, when I was fighting the winged 𝗵𝗃. That's what you fought? Present, Mike screeched, but luckily I covered Aerith's ears in time with my ribbons. I nod. Before I evolved, I was being thrown around. I was with Izuku-sensei, but when the wingless one snapped his arms, I moved him next to a bush where 3 of my classmates were and tried to lead the 𝗵𝗃 away, but I wasn't strong enough. But as soon as Todoroki and Izuku arrived next to me, I transformed into this. I waved my ribbons around to gesture to my new form. There was only one outside of the USJ. When we got there, what happened? Snipe asked, confused. Well, the winged one was trying to get a hold on me, so I used my new limbs to swing it around in a circle about 10 times, and then I gained a new ability that could be useful. I said, remembering the pink mist that gained everyone's attention, so they nod for me to continue. As I threw the 𝗵𝗃, my ribbons glowed pink, and I naturally swinged them, and a powerful pink mist bursted out at high speed. What happened to the 𝗵𝗃? 𝗵𝗃𝗃 asked me. The warped villain portaled it out of the USJ, I replied with an unsure voice. I see 𝗧𝗍𝗍 looked at me and took a picture with my phone and a camera in the room. We'll need a new hero costume for if you transform. Can you stop by Recovery Girl and get a BLD sample in this form? He asked with a smile. Of course I can. But I want to know if this could happen if I used any elemental attacks. I asked. It is possible, but don't train alone. Always train with someone or Izuku, since I know you both are technically Aerith's parents and hang out with each other the most. He grinned while sipping his tea. I nod. I'm going to transform back. Can you take off the collar, Vlad-sensei? I asked him with a kind voice. He nodded and took the collar off, and I jumped off the table and then transformed back and picked 𝗧𝗓𝗏 up. I'll stop by and get the BLD sample if she's still there. I said, not keen on getting BLD. Took? Oh, she's there. I messaged her the moment you said you evolved, 𝗍𝗬 said with a giant grin. Okay, I'll head back over there, and maybe can I get another uniform? I asked him as I said that a uniform was thrown at my face, but I caught it. Thanks. I said happily. No problem, Fuji-san, just leave your hero costume in Recovery Girl's office. 𝗍𝗍 replied. I nod and head back to her office with a sleeping 𝗧𝗓𝗏 in my arms. Time skip. After I got the BLD sample and changed, I headed outside to see Izuku standing at the gate. Hey puppy, Izuku said when I got closer. Hello Izuku, who you waiting for? I asked him since he seemed to be waiting for someone. I was waiting for you, so wanna head back? He asked me, holding a hand out for me to grab. Yeah, it's getting late and who knows what time bakugo will show up. I said to him, he'll most likely show up at 9 o'clock in the morning since he sleeps at 8 p.m. Izuku said with positivity in his voice. Well, that's some sleeping schedule, I said, unsure how bakugo sleeps that early. Yup, are you okay? I saw your list of injuries, he said with a worried voice. I look over to see his face and he did look quite worried. Yup, I'll be dizzy for a few days, but it's better than being hospitalized. And do you want to hold her? I gesture to a sleeping 𝗧𝗓𝗏 in my arms. He nods and gently grabs her up from my arms. So what did the principal say? He sounded curious about that. Oh, he told me if I meet another villain then he'll put me in UA dorm system. They're about to start soon, I said with I don't know how to feel about this voice, really? He exclaimed, yup, but since I own a mansion beside a pro hero they'll only do it if it happens again, I said with a smile. As we walked I felt safe since I was with Izuku. When we arrived at my house I gently grabbed 𝗧𝗏𝗏 from Izuku. You gonna be okay until tomorrow? He asked, probably unsure about leaving me. I nod. I have Yamada next door if anything happened, plus I sent Bakugo my address, and if I'm not here he'll most definitely curse me out if I'm not here. And your mom must be worried, I said. He nods, but before I could move he kissed my cheek. See you tomorrow, puppy, he said and walked away. I was still processing what happened and went inside and changed 𝗧𝗓𝗏 into her PJs and tucked 𝗧𝗓𝗏 in and went to my room and changed into my PJs and got in bed and fell asleep. Fun fact number 6. Hanami's house has 26 rooms. Fun fact number 7. Izuku and Hanami once played a game Eri made up called Wedding, and Hanami's face was a red disaster after they finished the game. Fun fact number 8. If you asked Izuku, he would admit Eri is like a daughter to him. Fun fact number 9. Aki is a purebred Shiba Inu and her fur is a sandy red color. Fun fact number 10. Hanami knows how to fight in skirts. Fun fact number 11. Hanami hates needles and will run from them if possible. Fun fact number 12. When Izuku slapped 𝗵𝗃𝗲 actually saw and snorted at it. Warning, possible cursing, italics, thinking, action, texting. On phone call Hanami's POV. I opened my eyes and looked at the time. My clock said it was 7 o'clock in the morning, so I uncovered myself and stretched and went to shower. After I showered, I dried off, and since school was cancelled, I put on a light purple sweater dress that goes just below my knees and magenta fishnet leggings. I was going to wake Eri up, but decided to let her sleep in until I finished breakfast since it's not a school day, not anymore. I decided to make rice and chicken, something simple and easy, plus Eri loves it. After I finished it, I was about to set the table when I heard a knock on the door, so I went to answer it to see a person holding a box. So I said kindly, "Oh, hello ma'am, here's a package for you." The person said, holding up a box, "Thank you," I said, and closed the door after grabbing the box. When they left, I grabbed the box and put it on the counter. Then I grabbed a knife to cut the tape off. I opened the box to see it was the hair dye and equipment I ordered. I took the stuff out the box and put it on the counter and finished setting the table. Now I need to wake up Eri, and since it's 7:30, bakugo should be here around 8 o'clock. Now I need to message Izuku to see if he's awake. Sent to Izuku, "You up?" Received from Izuku, "Yup, and I'm on my way. Is Eri up?" Sent to Izuku, "Not yet, I was about to wake her up." Received from Izuku, "Wanna wake her up together?" Sent to Izuku, "She would be ecstatic if you were already here and the door's unlocked." Received from Izuku, "Well, I know that because I'm right behind you." I turned around to see Izuku with a big silly grin on his face. "Oh hey Izuku, how were you so quiet?" I asked curiously because usually his footsteps are loud. "Well, I just distracted you with texting and I slipped in the house to look for you." He replied with a cheeky grin, "Well, now you're here, let's wake up Eri." I said happily. He nodded and followed me to Eri's room. When we got there, I slowly opened the door and made my way over to her bedside with Izuku behind me. I shake Eri and she stirred for a minute before yawning and opening her eyes. "Well, good morning Eri, I have a surprise for you," I said with enthusiasm and a smile. When Eri looked behind me, she literally jumped out of bed and glomped. "Izuku, Papa!" she shouted happily. "Good morning pumpkin, now how about you go shower and come down for breakfast?" He said. She nodded and booked it to the bathroom. We headed downstairs and sat down and waited for Eri to finish. "So when Kaken getting here?" he asked, looking at the clock. "I don't know, I'm about to message him," I said to Izuku before I could grab my phone. It went off. Ding. Received from bakugo, "I'm on my way, you better have the SQR up." Sent to bakugo, "She's in the shower and Izuku is already here, wanna join us for breakfast?" Received from bakugo, "No, I already ate, but your address is XXXXXXXX, right?" Sent to bakugo, "Yep, the door's unlocked, so when you get here just knock and come in." Received from bakugo, "I'm 5 minutes away, I'll be there soon." By ribbon arms. I laughed at the nickname. "Mama, what do I wear?" Eris yell echoed through the house. "Put on a black shirt and skirt." I yelled back. Me and Izuku finished setting the table and then Eri walked in with a hairbrush and looked over to me. "Mama, can you help me with my hair?" she asked me with a small smile. I nodded. "Come over and sit down on the kitchen chair so I can brush your hair." Eri walked over and sat in the chair in front of me so I could brush her hair without bending over, plus she can eat while I brush her hair. Eris' hair was already long when I met her, but now that she is getting cared for, so her hair is now a little past her thighs. I asked her if she wanted to cut it, but she always declined, saying she loves her long hair. I started to brush her hair and I noticed that there was still some of her shampoo in her hair. "Eri, did you rinse your head?" I asked her. She tilted her head. "I did, Mama. But I guess I missed some. I'm already out of the shower, how will I get it out?" She looked at me. I picked Eri up and brought her to the kitchen sink. I pulled the nozzle that comes out of the sink. "Eri, can you put your head over the sink?" I asked her. She nodded her head, and when she did, I put the nozzle over her head and washed the rest of the shampoo out. After about 2 minutes later, I finished Eri's hair and dried it and brushed it. "Oh, I ribbon arms." I heard someone shout. I turned around to see Bakugo in the doorway. "Hey Bakugo, when did you get here?" I asked. He huffed. "Around 3 minutes ago, but do you have the dye?" He replied. I nod. Yup, they arrived an hour ago and they're on the cabinet over there. I pointed to the cabinet. He walked over and checked the brand I bought. You bought a good brand and it's safe for kids. Most people would not have checked. He sounded proud. Well, I'm not letting Eri's hair get ruined because of hair dye. I look over to Eri, who's playing with Izuku and Aki. So does she know what she wants? He looked at the dyes I bought. Yup, she said a white to green ombre, but I don't know how to dye hair, that's why I asked you. I said, tilting my head. Well, leave her with me and in an hour it should be done, so go on date with the dumb nerd or something. He then looked like he had a plan and looked at Izuku and had a devilish grin, then pulled his phone out and messaged someone. I smiled. I trust her with you, plus I know she won't cause any trouble. I looked to where Eri was spinning around. Does the SQR know how to sit still for about an hour? Bakugo looked at Eri, who was spinning around after putting his phone on the counter. Well, she can sit still for about 2 hours before needing to play or move around. I said. He nods. Anything else I might need to know? Well, she's a talker, so she might ask you about your quirk or ask random questions, so be prepared to answer some random questions. I decided to warn him. Eri decided to come over to say hi. Hi, Mr. Boom. Why you here? Eri's eyes lit up seeing Bakugo again. Well, I'm here to dye your hair. Bakugo told her the reason he was here. Oh, okay. Eri said with a smile. I swear her smile can beat the sun up. Poor son. Bakugo went to Izuku and whispered something into his ear, but I couldn't hear what he said. After Izuku nodded, Bakugo walked away with a satisfied look on his face. Bakugo then picked up Eri and walked into the bathroom. A few minutes later I felt Izuku pick me up bridal style. Put me down, Izu. I yelled with a small smile. He looked at me, then the floor. Nah, I would rather have you in my arms than let the floor have you, he said with a smug look. I just stayed in his arms while trying to process what he said with a pink face. Did he just try to flirt with me? Yes, I did just try to flirt, and puppy, you said that out loud. He whispered into my ear. If my face wasn't red by now it would be a miracle, but I knew my face was red because I felt my cheeks turn warm. Izuku then proceeded to walk to the door with me still in his arms. Izu, can you please put me down? I asked again with big puppy eyes. Only if I can take you to the park. He had a glint in his eye. I guess we can go to the park. Eri is with Bakugo and he will protect her, I said with positivity and grabbed his hand and dragged him out the door. After a 10-minute walk we arrived at the park. As we both walked I saw a big pond with koi fish in it. They're so pretty, I exclaimed looking around. Like you? I heard Izuku mumble out loud. Well, thank you, Izuku. I decided to try and embarrass him. Oh well, you're welcome, puppy, and your dress complements your body figure nicely. Izuku smirked when my face turned red. I lightly smacked him in the head. Izuku, you can't just say that. I shake my head embarrassed at his statement. Why, I'm not lying. His grin wasn't going away anytime soon. Izuku, I whined. Hanami. He mocked me. I immediately stopped whining and turned away. And he grabbed my hand and pulled me closer to him. Well, there's more koi ponds, so why don't we look at them? Izuku said, showing me a picture of the park from an aerial view. There were like 6 ponds and each had different fish in it. The first one we went to had a bunch of giant colorful goldfish in it. The fish are huge, I exclaimed, shocked. Well, pet store goldfish are tinier than if they are living in the wild. Izuku informed me with a smile. Wow, I never been to a pet store before. Is it like a dog or cat cafe? I tilted my head confused. Well, no, in pet stores there's more kinds of animals in them and some even let you pet or hold them out of the cages, he said with a small smile. I looked at him with stars in my eyes. That sounds like fun. Have you been to one? I asked him. Well, my mom took me to one when I was 10 and I held a female cockatiel that we brought home and she stays in my room and wakes me up in the mornings, he said smiling. Really, what's her name? I asked him, excited that he owns a cockatiel. Well, we named her Sunstrike after how fast she flew in our yard the day we brought her home. She didn't leave when she got loose. He started to talk about what kinds of animals were in pet stores until we reached the next pond. When we got to the next pond we were on a pretty red bridge with cherry blossoms trees in the water. I noticed there was multiple kinds of fish in the pond along with lily pads. Izuku, what kind of fish are those? I pointed to a large black fish with a huge fin on its back and it had whiskers under its face. Well, they look like some kind of catfish, Izuku said and started mumbling, gaining the attention of 2 classmates who were looking at the fish. Hey Deku-kun, wait up. I heard a voice yell. I saw Uraraka and Iida heading towards us, so me being the shy person I am, I hid behind Izuku. Midoriya, how are you today? Iida says while doing his robot hand motions. Well, I'm on a date, so I'm walking around with my date. He said it more like a question, but as long as they don't see me I won't have to socialize, but sadly I was seen by 𝗬𝗧𝗔𝗊𝗧𝗏. Wait, I recognize those ears anywhere now. I wouldn't have thought you would be taking Hanami-san out on a date since you're both shy beans. 𝗬𝗧𝗔𝗊𝗧𝗏 said with gleaming eyes looking at me. I decided since I was already seen to make myself known, so I stepped out from behind my human meat shield to say hi. I looked over to Iida and 𝗬𝗧𝗏 and waved. "Oh, Fuji-san, it's nice to see you again after yesterday. The class was worried, especially after a paramedic asked for Yaoyorozu to join you on your way to you. Why didn't you text us?" he said with a worried voice and slow hand movements. "I am sorry, Iida, 𝗬𝗧𝗏, but since yesterday I've been out of it. I had more injuries than Izuku and Aizawa-sensei, but I healed quicker and I couldn't text anyone except Momo, Izuku or bakugo because they're the only numbers I have and my head is still sore." I bowed down to show how sorry I was. Then 𝗬𝗧𝗏 walked up to me and wrapped her arms around my torso and pulled my head onto her shoulder. I was shocked and looked to Izuku for help since I didn't know what to do if someone hugged me and the other girls were terrified when we saw your own bones sticking out of your leg out from afar, plus your head was split open and you were covered in your own blood. What even caused that? 𝗬𝗧𝗏 looked at me along with Iida. I shook my head and winced at the slight sting I felt. "I don't want to remember. If you want to know, ask Momo. Please don't bring it up. I'm still terrified to remember that thing." I shivered thinking about being the 𝗵𝗃 ragdoll again. "I'm sorry, Hanami, I forget it just happened yesterday and you could have trauma from it." 𝗬𝗧𝗏 bowed down with Iida. "It's okay, but me and Izuku were about to go see the other fishies," I said with starry eyes. They looked at me confused until Izuku popped in. "She has never been to a park or seen a fish bee before," he said with a bit of symphony in his voice. I didn't know why though. They both looked at me and nodded. "Well, have fun on your date. We'll be leaving now," 𝗬𝗧𝗏 said happily and grabbed Iida and began to walk away. I heard a camera snap and saw 𝗬𝗧𝗏 booking it with Iida running after her, screaming at her something about privacy. Izuku sighed and turned to me and grabbed my hand. "Come on, let's head to see the turtles." He seemed excited. I looked at him confused. "What's a turtle?" I asked him confused. "It's a four-legged reptile that is green and has a hard shell," he said like it was the most obvious thing. "Oh, pretty." I saw a turtle with speckles on its shell. I then heard a thump to see a turtle upside down, so I walked over and turned it right side up, but then I realized I forgot I was with Izuku, so I had to look for him. After a few minutes later I found Izuku looking around like he lost something, but then remembered that something was me. I snuck behind him and was about to jump on him until I felt hands around my waist. "Puppy, you tell me I'm not good at stealth, but you're louder than me," he said with humor lacing his voice. "Well, I was trained by a stealth hero, but it took me less time to learn the capture weapon than the stealth," I said, not even bothered by his hands on my waist. "What a cute couple," I heard a familiar voice say. I turned around to see Namuri in civilian clothes, and even though she was a limelight hero, her civilian name wasn't really known. "But why is she in a park she personally hates? Because the bees that always chase her she told me about." "Ma'am, but we're not dating yet," Izuku said to Namuri. She looked at me and wiggled her eyebrows. "I don't see how you're not dating yet. She looks like a sweetheart," she gushes and turned around saying, "Love is so youthful. I think we should go while she's distracted." I whispered in his ear looking at the crazy Namuri. "That's a good idea, but wanna finish our date first." He offered his hand out for me to grab and I grabbed his hand and walked away from the crazy Namuri. We continued to walk in the park and saw many kinds of birds in the trees and bushes. We even saw a fox and her baby in a clearing, but we had to leave so we could get back to Eri. When we arrived back at my house to see if Bakugo finished dyeing Eri's hair, and when Izuku opened the door he was tackled by a white and green blur. "Mama. Papa." When I looked at what caused Izuku to stumble, I saw Eri with white hair fading into a dark green, and some of her front hair had green in it too. She actually looked like I had a kid with Izuku. She was also wearing a lime hairband. I designed this from a template in Metabang, but her hair is a little bit longer. I just needed a way to show the ombre. "Eri, you look appealing." I picked her up and twirled her around. I looked over to see Bakugo sitting on the couch, so I walked up to him. "Was she good for you?" I asked him. He looked up at me and nodded. "She only asked about 10 questions about my quirk and started to mumble afterwards. Deku rubbed off on her too much," he said, a little angry about that. I sat down and put Eri on my lap. "So was it hard dyeing her hair?" I asked, since Eri's hair is pretty thick. "Not really, but she was very still and only asked once if she could get up to get a drink. The whole 2 hours she sat there." I looked over at him. "Then Eri, but she fell asleep." So how was your date? He looked over to Izuku for an answer. I lost her in the middle of it, he said with a smile. He looked over to me then to Izuku, but I covered Aris' ears because I knew what was about to happen. You what? He screamed at Izuku for about an hour and I just walked off to put Eri into her bed. Good night, Eri. I kissed her forehead and shut the door. When I got back to the living room I saw Bakugo scolding Izuku for something. You man up and ask her out already? He screamed, smacking him in the head. I smiled. Bakugo may act like he don't care for Izuku at school, but he does care for him like a big brother would, and I find it cute. Alright, if you kids get any louder Eri will wake up, and if she does wake up I'll freeze you. I threatened them. You don't even use ice, Bakugo said to me in a loud voice. Not yet, I don't, but when I do you'll be the first one I'll freeze, I said with a twinkle in my eye. You better not. He said with a glare. I looked to Izuku to see him staring at me. You've been staring at me for a while, you good? I asked him. Oh yeah, I was just thinking, he said with a small smile. I looked over to Bakugo. So we basically went to the park. I learned about fish. We ran into two of our classmates. Wait, what? Bakugo said. Did I say something? I tilted my head. Which dumb idiots did you both run into? He looked at Izuku for an answer. Well, we ran into 𝗬𝗧𝗏 and 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏, he said with a smile. I looked back at Bakugo and he looked like he was going to explode, so I decided to try and distract him. So do you want to stay for dinner? I asked him. He shook his head. If I'm out later then I'm supposed to be the hag will kill me, he said. I tilted my head confused. What's a hag? I looked at Izuku for an answer. It's what he calls his mom, Izuku said with a disappointed sigh. We sat down and talked for an hour and then an idea popped in my head. I want to try something but I'm not sure it will work, I said looking at the boys. They both look at me nodding for me to say my idea. I want to make a teleporting move so I can move around quicker in a building, I said with a giant grin. They stare at me for a minute until Bakugo got up. Well, you got a training area? He asked me. Well, yeah, it's the backyard, I said pointing to the backyard door. He grabbed the back of Izuku's outfit and dragged him while I lead the way to the backyard. When I opened the door to the backyard, Aki dashes out the door and started to run around. Bakugo lets go of Izuku and looks at me. If you want to make a teleporting ability you'll probably need a lot of focus and stamina, he said. I nodded. It takes stamina for me to make a move, but after the move is made they have little limits like headaches and a sore body, I said thinking about psychic, which has a headache drawback while agility has sore muscles. Izuku somehow pulled out a notebook and started to write down some things. I want you to focus on the other side of your yard and try to teleport over there, Bakugo said with a straight face. I nod and looked towards the other side of the yard and I felt my eyes warm up like psychic and I blinked and I was at the other side. I was shocked for a bit since it didn't take long. Now do it back. I heard Bakugo yell at me after I did it again. We all trained our close combat so we could see who was stronger. Since Izuku had barely any combat training I pinned him pretty easily, but I was trained by a pro hero before school even started. But Bakugo was a lot harder and when the sun started to set we just put it as a draw for now. Well, I best be heading back before the hag yells at me, Bakugo said. I nodded as Izuku went home a few minutes ago because his mom called him asking where he was at. Yeah, get home safe, I said with a quiet voice. As we walked back in I whistled and Aki ran back inside. So who do you think is gonna teach tomorrow since ours is practically bedridden? He asked me. Our teacher is stubborn. I bet he comes in class all mummified and acts like he's fine, plus he never misses a class on his record, I said with no hesitation. Really? Bakugo asked. I nod. Ever since I meet him he's pretty stubborn, I said. Well, we'll see, but I dare you to scare the class tomorrow with that new form of yours since no one knows about it except 𝗬𝗏𝗏, he said with a grin. I nod. Aizawa will probably give me a task tomorrow, so be prepared. I may have a target, I warned him since he did help me train. We reached the front door and as he left I waved and went back in and changed into my PJs and went to sleep. How do like 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 disguise? And I've went back and edited all the chapters that I've posted already to try and make the talking and the story more understandable. I hope it worked. Fun fact number 13. Hanami earned Bakugo's respect after he found out a villain was literally hunting her kid down along with herself. He was also slightly worries about her and Eri ever since she actually said it to him and Momo. Fun fact number 14. The kitchen sink idea has actually happened to me because a family friend was tired of looking at my greasy hair that I have trouble with. Fun fact number 15. 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗏 and 𝗳𝗏𝗏 actually saw them walking to the park, so 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗏 stalked them because she ships them while 𝗳𝗏𝗏 was just worried about his classmates' health since she didn't contact them. Warnings, possible cussing action thoughts texting Hanami's POV. When I woke up I was about to go back to sleep, but then remembered that we had school today. So I got out of bed, showered, and put my uniform on with my black fishnet and wrapped some bandages around my midsection because it was still a little bruised and I probably made them worse yesterday from training. I heard shuffling around, so I'm guessing Eri was already awake, so I went to fix breakfast. I just made sausage and eggs since Eri loves it and we have time. I heard footsteps, so I turned around to see Eri. "Morning, Mama," she yawned, rubbing her eyes. "Good morning, sweetie, are you ready for school?" I asked her. She nods. "Well, I made breakfast and we need to eat and hurry if we want to get there before everyone," I said with a smile. After we ate I cleaned our plates and put my shoes on. I decided to wear white knee-high boots since it would hide my banged-up leg. I locked my door and grabbed Eri's hand and we started walking until a familiar car drove up beside us. When the window rolled down I saw Yamada driving with Izuku in the passenger seat, mummified, and Hitoshi in the back. "Get in, kid, your leg is still a little messed up, right?" Yamada asked me. I picked Eri up and opened the back door and buckled Eri in the car seat, and then I buckled up. And Yamada started to drive. "So how are you doing, Shota?" I asked him, looking at his bandaged body. "I'll live, but how's your leg and head?" He asked me. "Well, I keep getting a pain in my head, so that's fun, and my leg is still sore." I said to him, "I know what will make you feel better." He grinned. I expected this. "What am I supposed to do?" I asked him, grinning. "Try getting in through the front door in your new form and scare the class," he said, grinning. I nodded, excited to try it. When we arrived, Izuku took Eri to Nizu and I headed my way to the classroom and texted Bakugo since I had to go through the front door, but he never said I couldn't have any help. Sent to Bakugo, "Hey, I need to get through the front door without being noticed, so who's staring at the door right now?" Received from Bakugo, "Shitty hair and dunce face are the only ones, and I'll just yell at them when you hear a boom. Just open the door and walk in." I laughed at his nicknames and transformed into my EV form and thought about my pink furred self to evolve, and I glowed blue again and felt my body change. When the blue light bursted I walked towards the door and waited. "Boom, you shitty hair and dunce face." I took that as my cue to open the door with my ribbons and silently walked in and ran to hide under Izuku's desk. "Bro, it was just a joke." I heard Kirishima yelp, "Well, I am not a Pomeranian." He was snarling like one, so I couldn't tell the difference from one and him. "Has anyone heard from Fuji-san?" I heard Toru ask the class quietly. The class went silent. Midoriya is the only one who knows her condition since he left to see her, and he ain't here yet. Karo. I heard Tsu say, "Speaking of the devil, and he arrives." I saw Izuku walk in to be bombarded with our classmates' questions, and I knew he saw me under the desk, so I shook my head. "Bro, how bad was Fuji-san's injuries?" I heard Kirishima ask him. Then everyone quieted down so Izuku could speak. "Well, she had worse injuries than sensei, but the one that concerned me most was her head." "Funny, he said the same thing to me about that injury." "Wait, you said worse injuries than Izuku-sensei? Who the heck did she fight?" I heard Denki ask Izuku. "Well, Denki, she fought with Izuku-sensei after the warp villain separated us. I'm still surprised she can shoot a gun without hesitation." He muttered out loud, "A gun?" Zero yelled, "I did remember seeing her pull it out and shoot the hand person with the warp villain." Karo, Tsu said with a finger next to her mouth, "Please stop talking about that, I'm gonna pee my breathes thinking about it." Mineta yelled, "Grow a pair." Bakugo yelled at him. I decided to start when I noticed Izuku was at the door. I focused on chairs and picked them up, making them go in a circle into the air like I did last time. "Not again!" Denki shouted, "But Fuji ain't here." I heard Mina yell. I snickered at their faces but saw Todoroki looking right at me. I shake my head and he just turned around pretending to not notice me. "All right, class," I heard, and plopped back down under his desk and dropped everything, hearing some screams. I saw Izuku standing in the doorway in his mummified glory. "Sensei, you're all right. That's what I expect of a pro hero," Ida said, chopping his hands. "You call that all right?" I heard Uraraka screech, "My well-being doesn't matter," and Fuji come out from under my desk. "You passed," he said with a hint of amusement in his voice. "What? But she's not here." Mina said, "She had worse injuries than you. How could she be here?" Kirishima asked him, confused. I stepped out from under his desk with my bandages still wrapped around my stomach and my back leg. "Fuji-sen?" Most of the class yelled. So I nodded. "What happened to you?" Denki yelled, looking at my new form. I waved my ribbon around, smacking the door shut, and de-evolved back to my fluffy cloud white self. Then I transformed back to my human self. "Well, being a ragdoll has its perks," I whispered, horrified. "Ragdoll?" Some of the class shouted concerned, "Enough of that, and Fuji, even though you was thrown around a little, at least you unlocked a part of your quirk, you should use that to your advantage," Izuku said to me with a "don't argue with me" tone. I nodded and walked to my desk. "But our fight ain't over yet," Izuku said. "More villains?" Mineta screeched. He looked at the class. "The UA Sports Festival is coming up," he said, grinning. The class sighed in relief, but right after a villain attack. I heard Denki say Principal Nizu thought it would be a way to show the villains that they didn't win, so train hard and show them that we go beyond plus ultra. Izuku said with a small smile behind his bandages. After class some of the girls walked up to me, but I booked it behind Izuku and tried to listen to their conversation. "She's still scared of us." I heard Toru dramatically sigh. "Well, she seems comfortable with Midoriya," Karotsu said, looking at me and Izuku. "Well, they are very close," I heard Momo say to them. I saw them walk close to me again, so I booked it out the classroom. Since it was lunchtime, I headed to the roof and unlocked the room to see Eri sitting there waiting for me. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, shutting the door. "Mama." She walked over and hugged me, and my phone dinged. "Received from Momo. The girls are on to me, so I can't make it. Sorry." Hanami sent to Momo. "I figured they would try and follow you, so don't worry. I feel bad for running, but I can't let Eri spend lunch alone." Received from Momo. "You're doing what any mom would do for their own child, and that's good. I'll keep them busy, and you enjoy lunch with Eri." I put my phone down when I heard a knock on the door. I put Eri behind me and looked through the peephole to see violet hair, and I sighed in relief. I opened the door and saw Hitoshi with 3 bags and handed 2 to me. "Thanks," I said while handing Eri a bag. "No problem, but after next class my class is gonna block yours in and declare war, so I think you should need to find a escaped," he said to me, a little worried. "I could just use my new trick. Don't worry, but don't be mean to them. Declaring war on class 1 ain't smart, but I trust you," I said to him. "Where's Papa?" Eri asked me. "Well, Eri, he's in the cafeteria with his other friends since he doesn't want them to figure out about you until Nizu says we can," I said to her with a small smile. "Well, will he be here tomorrow?" She tilted her head. "I don't know, Eri, but remember he always has to sneak up here since most people aren't allowed on the roof," I said to her. "Oh, okay." She started to eat her apple. Me and Hitoshi talked about our classes and how they were when I told him about what I did today, and he laughed. "You made a homemade merry-go-round?" he asked between laughs. I nodded. "It was fun for me," I said, taking a bite of my chicken-flavored rice. "I bet they would scream if you had a new ability during the festival," he said with a grin. I nodded. "I'm working on some new ones so I can surprise them," I said after swallowing my rice. "Really? At least I know one person in the hero course ain't selfish," she said with a small grin. "But Papa ain't selfish." Hitoshi and I, Eri said with a smile. "I'll be the judge of that. From that, Dad says he's a problem child who won't stop breaking his bones," he said with a grin. I sighed but nodded. I needed to get to class, so I looked over at Eri. "You remember the way to Kyo's office, right?" I asked her. She nodded. "I need you to head there before lunch is officially over." I told her, "Okay, Mama, but are you gonna make it to class?" She asked me. "Since it takes about 10 minutes to get to the roof from my classroom, I'll be fine, but I best be heading back to," I said and kissed her forehead. As soon as I left with Hitoshi, and Eri went the other way to Kyo's office. When I got back I walked in class normally, and that must have shocked everyone since I usually sneak in, but I had a headache and a stomachache, so I just put my head on my desk and closed my eyes. I felt someone grab my tail hard, and I looked back to see Mineta, and since I was having a headache I wasn't having it. Mineta let go of my tail. "Only my lover can touch my tail, and I have a headache," I said loud enough for the class to hear me, and turned to see what's going on. "But it's so fluffy and I could be your future lover," he said, drooling at me. I growled at him, but he just pulled my tail harder and it hurt, and he was messing my fur up, so I had a plan. But Bakugo wasn't in the room, but I knew he was close cause I smelled caramel in the hallway, and if he hears my scream I bet he'll come running to my aid. "Bakugo, help, A's being a pervert," I screamed loudly. Everyone was confused and shocked until they heard explosions and the door was blown open. "You perverted grape, what did I say about touching her or any of the girls?" He yelled at him, and when he let go of my tail I ran behind Izuku and hugged him from behind while everyone just stared. "Did Bakugo just do what I think he did?" Denki asked Kirishima, confused like he was seeing stuff. "I think he did," Kirishima said while nodding. My tail was sore now along with my head and stomach, so I just walked up to Momo and I transformed into my EV form and plopped down on her lap while Momo brushed my tail careful with a soft brush. She was also massaging my shoulder blades. Mineta, you shouldn't grab people's tails like that. Some quirks have the user go into a weird state when grabbed, but Hanami quirk is not full matured, so it doesn't really affect her yet, but it's still painful for her. Izuku said, looking at me, but he was glaring at him. Mineta huffed, and what are you, her lover? He said in a sassy tone. I would hit him, but I was too sore to move and Momo's massage was making me tired. We both flinched at the question and a few people noticed, but one only said anything about it. Mito bro, are you dating Fuji-san? That's so manly. Kirishima asked him. We aren't official yet. Izuku mumbled. The class exploded into chaos, but when Aizawa walked in it stopped. What happened to Fuji-san and why is the door damaged? He asked, looking at me. Mineta grabbed and pulled Fuji's tail and she screamed at him for it. Then she pointed to the door, and Bakugo almost blew the door of the hinges. Not to mention she has a headache, Momo said quietly. He nodded and just continued to speak. First off, Mineta detention. We do not assault our classmates or anyone we meet, Aizawa said with a glare, but I didn't assault her. Mineta screeched. Izuku glared at him again. You did, Mineta. Grabbing a person's tail is considered SXL assault if I'm correct. He said, looking at Aizawa for backup. He's right, Mineta, you're lucky. I'm letting you off with a warning. If you do it again I'll expel you, Aizawa said, glaring at him. Now let's start class. He said after the bell ringed. I booked it so I wouldn't be trapped in the classroom, but I was almost stepped on if I wasn't quickly picked up by Momo. Hanami, you okay? She asked me, looking at the swarm of people in front of our class door. I nodded, but I needed to get out of here. I saw Hitoshi walk up and start speaking to the class, but I didn't pay attention. I just focused and turned into my Sylvian form. I picked a name during lunch, and since I say Sylvian without the translator, I named it that. I glowed blue and the light bursted. I used my ribbons and scooted people gently out of my way with them so I could head to Kyo's office, and while I made my way through I heard some comments. Wow. They're so pretty. That's so awesome. No wonder they're in the hero course. When I made it to Kyo's office I unevolved and transformed back, and luckily Chio noticed me entering. Aizawa texted me saying you had a headache. Anything else? She asked, walking up to me as I sat on a bed. Yeah, I had a stomach ache earlier because of the bruises and my leg is still bangs up, I said with a wince as my headache returned. She kissed my forehead and the bruises on my stomach healed and my headache went away for now. Thank you, Chio. I would probably be dead without you, I said with a little laugh. Oh, I'm positive that you would be dead without me. She joked while smiling. I soon got airy and we headed home. Well, who's excited for the sports festival? I have a plan, so good luck trying to figure it out. And I still need a ship name for Izuku and Hanami. I was thinking like Izunami. Fun fact number 16. Hanami was originally going to unlock Flareon or Jolteon during the USJ attack so she could burn or fry the Nomus cells, but I figured Sylvian would make more sense because her friendship with Aizawa and her love for Midoriya would aid her evolution, and I couldn't really exactly strike her with lightning or set her on fire when there wasn't any around, and I have a plan for Jolteon. Cackles cute but evilly. Fun fact number 17. Shoto may not show it, but he actually cares about Hanami's well-being since after the USJ, since she saved him from the flying Nomu. That's why he just turned around and pretended not to notice her to make her happy. Fun fact number 18. Hanami has PTSD from being a Nomu ragdoll from the USJ attack, but she's too scared to ask for help. I tried to draw Hanami with a template like I did Eri, but it looks terrible. Possible BLD warning, cussing and 𝗬𝗧𝗍 Todoroki probably out of character, but oh well. Action thoughts. Texting time skip 2 weeks. Hanami's POV. After 2 weeks of training it was time for the sports festival and I already dropped off Eri with Yamada and Aizawa. I was currently attaching my translator I got permission to use for the festival to my neck for a price. I came up with some new moves and I planned on using it to my advantage, but my UA tracksuit was still different, so I hoped it wouldn't make me stand out. I already changed, but I was having trouble with the translator. I heard a knock on my stall. Hanami, are you done? Momo's voice was on the other side. I may need help, I said with my quiet voice. Well, come out so I can help you, she said with a chuckle. I walked out and Momo helped me attach the collar-looking translator. How did you even get permission to use this? It doesn't really matter with your quirk, Momo asked me confused. I looked at her and chuckled. Well, I sang flashback. I was currently in 𝗍𝗧's office to talk to him about the festival. There's always a break before the third round's right. I asked him to make sure I was right. You are right, Ms. Fuji, but I'm having a hard time thinking what to do during that. Why do you ask? He looked at me, probably catching on to what I was saying. If you can find me some time during the festival, I will do a performance since it will both do us a favor, I said with a small grin. If I get to perform, I could increase the agency offers I get and people could give UA tips for school stuff and trips. I said, you have a deal. He offered me a paw to shake with a gleam in his eyes. I shook his paw and left, needing to learn some abilities that could make a pretty show. Flashback end, you bargained with the principal. Momo looked at me, amazed I would do that. I mean, it could increase my agency offers, so it's worth a shot, I said, looking at the ceiling. Well, since you decided to put a show on, I'll make you a little outfit for when you're going to perform, she said with starry eyes. I'm nervous. I did learn new abilities and some elemental attacks, I said, walking out of the changing rooms with Momo. She clapped. That's amazing. I know you will do well, she said as we reached the waiting room. When we walked in, everyone noticed we arrived. I'll welcome you too, Ida said, chopping his arms around. Momo began to talk with the girls while I walked up to Izuku, who looked very nervous. You okay? I whispered to him. He nodded. Yeah, it's just that everyone around the world will be watching, he said, noticing my translator. With what I'm doing you would be surprised, I muttered. What do you mean? He looked at me confused. I chuckled at his confused face. You'll see, I said to him as I walked off to ask Momo for a brush. As I walked away, I saw Todoroki walk towards Izuku, but I was too busy trying to brushing my tail and hair so I could braid it so it won't get on the way, but the girls saw and had a bunch of hair flowers and ribbons on them somehow, and I probably don't want to know why. Hey Fuji-san. I turned to Mina to see her and the girls holding hair stuff and tilted my head confused. Can we help you with your hair? Mina asked me with starry eyes. I nodded and turned around so they had access to my long hair. After 10 minutes later, my hair had a bunch of cherry blossom petals in it and was in a French braid. Thank you, I shyly whispered. Mina squealed. She talked to us? She yelled, shaking poor Toru like crazy. All right everyone, it's almost time, we're about to head out, Ida said, chopping his hands. We all walked out of the tunnel and I saw Midnight on a stage. Would our representatives Bakugo Katsuki and Fuji Hanami come forward? Fuji-san and Bakugo. Kirishima shouted. Oh God, with Bakugo we're doomed, 𝗧𝗍𝗧 said, but Hanami will keep him in line, Momo said confidently while looking at her best friend. What? 𝗍𝗧 said nothing about this. I felt someone grab the back of my shirt and pull me. I looked over to see Bakugo. Come on Fuji, he huffed, and I walked up with him, almost hiding fully behind him while I saw Kirishima looking shocked, probably because he called me by my name. Midnight handed Bakugo the microphone. I pledge I will win, he yelled into the mic, and the chaos has begun. Everyone started yelling about how he was arrogant and rude, but I grabbed the mic and tapped it a couple times, making everyone calm down and be quiet. I cleared my throat and took a deep breath. I pledge that everyone will do their best no matter what class they're in, and also I hope everyone has a fun time, I said with a smile and handed the microphone back to Midnight and walked back and stood beside Izuku. Everyone started to cheer and I saw shock in my classmates' Izuku's eyes. We've been saved, 𝗧𝗍𝗧 said, anime crying an angel. I heard someone say in the crowd, that was a youthful speech, but now it's time to spin the wheel for our first event. Midnight said with a grin and spin the wheel. The obstacle course, a 4 kilometers long race. Anything is allowed as long as you stay in the field. Only the first 43 will move on, she said with a grin. Everyone got lined up, and knowing Todoroki, he was going to try and freeze everyone, so I transformed into my EV form and jumped on Momo's head, which she didn't mind. She shouted. As soon as Todoroki shooted his ice, I jumped onto his head and jumped off him and started to book it. Seems like my favorite student from class 1A, Fuji Hanami, takes the lead. Yamada shouts in the mic, and you're not supposed to have favorites, I heard Aizawa say to him. You're one to talk, erase your head. Yamada shot back at him. I started to slow down because knowing UA they'll give a disadvantage to the first place winner, and I want to not have any restrictions on my little body. I got to the first obstacle to see some of the robots from the entrance exam, so I jumped and hardened my tail and swinged it on top of the robot and sent myself flying like I did in the quirk apprehension test. I passed the 0-pointers by going between their feet, making some fall down. I noticed some ice appear in front of the one I just went under and it fall over onto some people, so I used psychic and lifted the metal off while running away. Looks like Fuji Hanami is still being a hero by moving the metal so people can get out, Yamada said into the microphone, earning a comment from Aizawa. She's probably the most quiet kid in my class, but she has the heart of a hero. I always look forward to seeing her progression, he said, making me smile as I ran through the rest of the robots. Next obstacle is the fall. Careful and don't fall or you're out. The speakers blared with Yamada's screaming. I ran back a few meters and started to run up to the edge, focusing on one of my abilities called agility to boost my speed power. What is Fuji doing? I heard 値·yell, causing some people to look over at me when I reached the edge and jumped across each section without any hesitation. What a jump! I heard 値·yell when I landed on the other side. I started running again. I reached the next obstacle and smelled the ground, which smelled like metal, and our final obstacle is our land mine field. Don't worry, they're only strong enough to make you pee your pants, 値·said like it was a good thing. They weren't smart placing them because I can smell the metal pieces and I'm small enough to walk through them. I heard a boom and looked in front of me to see Izuku flying on a piece of metal, and I grinned proud. He used his head and not his poor bones. Wow, what are you teaching them, 𝗧𝗧𝗍𝗃? 値·screamed. Nothing, they taught theirself, Aizawa said, proud of his class. You heard it. 𝗧𝗍𝗃 is a terrible teacher. 値·screamed, hey. Aizawa whacked him in the head. First place is Izuku Midoriya. 値·yells. After a few minutes later I was able to get across the finish line. And coming fourth is Fuji Hanami. That's my favorite. 𝗧𝗍𝗃, why? He shouted in pain. Because Aizawa kicked him in the stomach. You can't say your favorite students out loud, he gruffed out, annoyed. After I passed the finish line, I breathed and plopped down on the ground. When people started to pass the finish line, I was picked up by a firm but careful grip. I looked up to see Midnight. I just wanted to let you know, if the next one is a team battle, you'll do it alone, she said, walking up to a stage again with me in her arms. Understandable, I would be a problem with any team because of how small I am, I said to her. Nizu must have planned this, dang it. I, though, with a small frown, after everyone else who made it finished, everyone else who didn't make it got eliminated. Midnight held her WHP up and everyone went silent. Maybe I should add a WHP to my costume. Or a taser mixed with a WHP to electrocute people so they couldn't move. Oh, I'll have to talk to Nizu about that. Alright, the next event is, Midnight said while taking a spin at the wheel, a cavalry battle. She said with a smile and started to explain the rules along with the points, and the first place prize is 10 million. Midnight said, probably feeling sorry for Izuku. Oh, and fourth place can't team with anyone and you're worth 1,000 points. She yelled, holding me up like the poor lion off of Lion King. I looked up at her. Why am I worth 1,000 points? I asked her, terrified of the eyes on me like a prize. Nizu said it was to make stuff interesting or something like that, she said, shrugging while securing my headband around my neck. I sighed but jumped out of her hands and waited for it to start. I saw some interesting pairs, and I saw Hitoshi with one of my classmates under his brainwash when everyone had their teams except me. Midnight was about to start the battle. Ready? She raised her arm. Set, she yelled, go. She slammed her hand on a timer and I booked it to a corner so I had time to plan. Everyone began to go towards Izuku. I felt bad but I couldn't team with anyone, so I secretly started to steal headbands with psychic from people who targeted Izuku and didn't notice me and booked it around the field. I was now at 1350 points, so I stole one more secretly from the blonde boy who angered Bakugo, putting me at 1680. I just needed to keep my points and I could assist my class from a high point of view. I lifted myself up with psychic and I was about 12 feet in the air, so as long as I don't fall I'll be okay. I stayed in the air helping most of my class until there was about 30 seconds and I put myself down and kept my eyes on everyone. I saw a big sheet of ice and guessed that Todoroki got Izuku's headband, so I ran over there to see Todoroki almost roasted Izuku, so I used my new move I named Bubble Beam, and the water pressure from my attack put his fire out. I swear he looked thankful for a minute, but now he was soaking wet. Time's up. Midnight shouted. Bakugo fell face first flat on the ground and I walked up to him and sat on his head, pretending like I defeated a big scary dragon. Get off me, Fuji. He screamed at me. I stayed on his head until I was grabbed and pulled off of him in a gentle grip. I looked up to see Todoroki. I need to talk to you and Midoriya, he said in his monotone voice. Alright. I jumped in his head and saw Endeavor looking at me curiously, and his eyes widened and he looked like he won a running marathon. Todoroki, why is your sorry excuse of a dad looking at me like he hit the jackpot? I asked him, a little scared. He looked confused until he saw his father looking at me and his eyes widened and he started to walk away and grabbed Izuku and pulled him with us. When we were in a non-habited part of the grounds, I looked to Todoroki. Can we hurry? I'm hungry. I asked him, sitting on his shoulder. He nodded and turned to Izuku. Midoriya, I broke my promise when I went against you. I used my fire. he said looking down at his hand. Me and Izuku looked confused but let him continue, but I felt something that no one did. He stopped for a second looking at Izuku. The power of all might, he said, and Izuku flinched. I swear if someone already found out we're doomed. Midoriya, tell me. He looked at Izuku for about 10 seconds. Are you All Might's secret love child or something? I started to laugh. Izuku screamed, are you? He tilted his head confused. No. Izuku screeched. He then looked at me. Oh no, please don't tell me he think I'm All Might's kid too. Fuji, ever since I met you, you've been closer to our homeroom teacher, and Present Mike literally just said you are his favorite student, he said looking into my eye. Okay, and? I asked him confused, are you somehow Izawa-sensei's and Yamada-sensei's secret love child? He looked at me with confidence that I was a secret love child. I busted out laughing and almost fell off his shoulder if he didn't catch me in time. Todoroki, I ain't, but I like the thought of having someone to care about me when I go home, I accidentally said. When I realized it, I covered my mouth with my paw. He looked at me with suspension and sighed. Okay then Fuji, you're free to go. I'm sure your boyfriend will probably tell you the rest later, he said as he placed me down on the ground. I just ran. I needed to find the cafeteria because I was hungry. But then I realized what Todoroki said. Boyfriend. The worst part is I didn't deny it before I left to get food. After a few minutes of walking, I was positive that I got lost again just by wandering the halls just looking for the food place. I heard footsteps and I was picked up gently. I looked up to see Momo smiling at me. I knew you would get lost, so I came to find you. Now are you hungry? She asked me. I nodded and jumped out of her arms, then transformed back to my human self. Yes, I'm hungry, I said with my arms in the air. Momo laughed at me. Well, considering how long you kept up psychic, you should be hungry, she said as we arrived and I got my food. Time skip. What is this fan service from the class 1A girls? Yamada asked confused. So what happened was after we ate Denki and Mineta said that we needed to wear these skimpy cheerleading outfits for a cheer battle, but I wasn't falling for it, but poor Momo did, so I was currently in a skimpy uniform showing my body off, and the other girls were very angry with Denki and Mineta. How could you trick us like that? Momo said, all gloomy because she used her quirk to make them, so I was patting her back. I feel so violated. Jiro said, using the pom-poms to cover her body, looking at everyone very disturbed. I also felt violated because my tail couldn't perk up or I would accidentally flash the crowd. I saw the girls squeal, but I didn't know why until a jacket was wrapped around my torso. I turned around to see a shirtless Izuku standing there with Todoroki, who had an extra jacket, and gave it to Momo, who thanked him and made some jackets for the girls. What I didn't know was both of them were glaring at Denki and Mineta or anyone who was staring at us. When Midnight announced I would fight Denki, I smirked evilly looking straight at him. I saw him shiver and yell, but when people looked at me I put my cute face on and tilted my head confused. Okay, first up, Midoriya Izuku vs ◵ Hitoshi. We all head back to the stands except Izuku and Hitoshi. I wonder how this battle will go. I transformed back and jumped on Todoroki's head because he is pretty tall. When the battle started I saw Hitoshi said something to him that made Izuku angry. It's hard to get him angry, so I pray Hitoshi will not die from this. When Izuku replied his eye went white, so I knew Hitoshi brainwashed him. As Izuku started to walk out of the arena I noticed his fingers started to glow red and he broke them. I'm so gonna kill him, he just had to break his poor bones. Hitoshi tried to get Izuku to answer him again, but Izuku flipped him out of bounds. Izuku Midoriya wins. Midnight raised her hand towards Izuku. I knew he was heading to Recovery Girl, so I jumped off Todoroki's head and ran down the steps to Kyo's office for the sports festival. I was about to wring a boy's neck. When I got there, surprisingly without getting lost, I nudged the door open to see Izuku with his 2 fingers wrapped up and Yagi sitting on a chair next to the door, and he didn't see me, so I do what anyone would do. I jumped on his head. Boo. After I said that, he jumped a little. Oh Fuji, I was expecting you to come here after young Midoriya broke his fingers, Mr. Yagi said to me. I nodded. I have to lecture him on breaking his bones. It's becoming a habit, and I can't let that happen, I said with my scary grin. Alright, but remember he can't control his quirk, Yagi said with a small smile. Happy his apprentice has such a caring lover, thinks they're together already. Well, I still need to lecture him. I don't want Eri to think breaking her bones is normal, I said bluntly. Well, I guess go for it then. He gestures to Izuku, who was staring at his bandages. I nodded and walked over to his bed and jumped on it. Walking up to his face, he somehow only just noticed me, so he grabbed my little body and put me on his lap. Hey puppy, she said with a small smile and started to pet me on the head. Hello Izuku, do you know why I'm here? I asked him with a small glare, enjoying the head pats. While they lasted, he put a hand on his chin and stopped petting my head. Well, considering how Eri is watching us and I broke my bones again, you came here to lecture me, he said with a grin. Well, you're right. I said. I lectured him for a few minutes before Chio joined us to tell him he was free to go. When we left, I was being carried. I realized how long I had been transformed, but I enjoyed being carried around. So whose match is next? Izuku asked me. I think it's 𝗳𝗍𝗵𝗲 and Mina's match. I said unsure. Well, let's get something to eat and then hurry back in time for your match, Izuku said with a smile. We got a sweet treat and we walked back to the stands to see Mina uppercut 𝗳𝗍𝗵𝗲 and Midnight announces her win. Hey, that's where Fuji went? I saw Momo say as she walked towards us, smiling. Hey Momo, I said, wagging my tail around now that I had a jacket over my waist. Did you get lost and Midoriya found you wandering around the halls? She asked with a grin. No, she surprisingly made it to Recovery Girl's office without getting lost, Izuku said with a big grin. Momo smiled at the two. The girls tried to invite her to a sleepover for after the festival, but she told them she had a lot of stuff to after it and ran away. Well, I'm gonna head down, my match is about to start, I said, jumping off Izuku's head and waving at them with my paw. Midnight had to come find me because I got lost on the way, but it was now my battle against Denki and I wasn't playing around. I want a clean, youthful fight, you two, Midnight said as she started cracked her 𝗬𝗍𝗶 in the air to start the fight. Since Denki was going to use his electric, I decided to burrow under the ground, so before I digged a hole I aimed a swift at the ground to make a smoke screen and I began to dig underground to tunneling under him and harden my tail to iron. Just because I can't see you doesn't mean you can dodge my attack. 3 million volts. He yelled out loud. I heard the buzzing and made a loud squeak, making them think he hit me, but I was already below him and dug up and iron-tailed his ankles, knocking him down. What a turn of events, and his poor ankles. Yamada yelled from inside the box. I kinda feel bad for Aizawa's eardrums. Since Denki was in dumb mode, I grew in size and grabbed his uniform in my mouth and threw him of bounds with, and he fell on his face out of the arena. That was a quick battle. Yamada said to Aizawa, well, she is one of my smart students, I heard Aizawa say with a hint of pride in his voice. Fuji Hanami is the winner. Midnight called out, raising her hand towards me. I didn't want to use the stairs or get lost again, so I used Psychic to lift myself up, and Izuku grabbed me out of the air and put me on his lap. I also used Psychic to lift Denki onto the stretcher with robots. So why did Midnight Sensei run off the field? Momo asked me with a suspicious look. I got lost, I sadly mumbled out. Really? Mina appeared behind me, causing me to jump up. Well, it's Uraraka's turn now, Ida said, pushing up his glasses. All right, next and final match for this round was Bakugo Katsuki versus Ochako Uraraka. This match went how I expected. Bakugo won, but when I saw his hand twitch I knew he was close to his limits. But what surprised me was that a pro hero said he was bullying Uraraka, which he wasn't. He was being weary of her, but I guess he didn't realize the rocks floating around in the air. Plus Aizawa roasted the pro hero, which I thought was funny. Now, since our first round has officially finished, we have a special announcement from our principal. Yamada yelled and Nizu appeared on the screen. Hello everyone, since it's break time I would like to announce that a last-minute idea for our festival was added by a student who offered to pre-form, so to that one student I would like to thank you and for them to get ready since you'll be on in about 15 minutes. Then the screen went black, so I had 15 minutes to get ready. A performance awesome, I heard Kirishima say with a grin. I wonder who is preforming. Mina said with a smile, well, I'm sure whoever is preforming is not from 1A, since everyone besides a few is too shy or not a preforming type, Tsu bluntly said. I turned to Momo and she nodded. I needed a ice quirk, so I walked up to Todoroki and pawed his leg. Yes, Fuji-san. He looked confused to why I would walk over to him all of a sudden. I need your assistance, Todoroki. Could you get down to the stage they're making down there and tell them I requested you? I'll need a ice quirk and I can't use ice properly. I tilted my head at him. He looked at me for a second, then turned to the stage and nodded at me and walked down the stairs and headed to the stage. Momo picked me up and we headed to the changing rooms. So what theme are we doing? Momo asked me while taking my measurements. A winter theme, I said with a smile. So that's why you asked Todoroki to head down there? He's a ice user. She started to make me a winter-themed outfit. When she finished the outfit and put it on me, I had white cloth boots with light blue cape with snowflakes on it, with a fluffy white fur scarf with a blue jewel in the center surrounding my neck, and a light blue bow on my ears and tail. Momo looked at the clock and we had 10 minutes left, so she picked me up and we started walking to the stage 𝗵𝗃 made like a couple minutes ago. Do you have a routine planned? Momo looked down at me with an eyebrow raised. I nodded. I do, but I needed a ice user or I couldn't do it. That's all I'm going to say. It's a surprise, I said with a smile. She nodded. Does anyone know it's you preforming besides me? She asked me. I shook my head. Nope, not even Sensei knows, so it should be a shock to him with my new abilities I have. I said, grinning. When we got there I saw Todoroki standing with Midnight, and when she saw us she walked over. So why did Todoroki come over and say you requested him? She raised an eyebrow at me. Well, I needed ice everywhere for my routine and Todoroki is the only one with a ice quirk, I bluntly said, turning to Todoroki. I needed you to make 2 decent-sized mountains of ice and some ice columns, I said with a grin. He looked at me. What do I get from this? He asked me, confused. I smirked. An angry 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟𝗘, I said as I was interrupted. Consider it done. Where do you want it? He said with no hesitation. I need it on the sides of the stage like spikes and a pedestal at the beginning of the stage, I said, remembering my routine I practiced, just without ice and used rocks as a substitute. As soon as he did it I had 2 minutes before it started, so I lifted Momo and Todoroki with psychic and put them back with the class. Soon the screen lit up and it showed Nizu. Alright, now everyone, let me introduce our pre-former student from class 1A, Nizu said with a grin. I heard my classmates yell from here, who's missing? I heard Mina shouted to the class, I don't know. Denki shouted, but before that I heard the announcement, Fuji Hanami. Nizu announced and I shot forward onto a ice column, twirling as swift before I landed stars to fly in the air in a circle due to psychic. I then heard the cheering of the audience. How did Fuji plan this? Eraser head, did you know about this? I heard Yamada ask Aizawa. No, I didn't. It seems Fuji wanted to surprise her class and her teacher, he said, looking down at his student on the ice pedestal twirling around. I jumped off the column and shot a fairy wind into the swift, causing a burst of pink and yellow glittery stars. Then I picked myself with psychic and threw myself into the air, aiming another fairy wind at an ice column, shattering it into tiny pieces and lifted them up to form tiny hearts and snowflakes. I heard more cheering and looked towards class 1A's stands and moved the hearts and snowflakes closer to me and moved them around to look like it was snowing like a blizzard, and it caused my fur to glow a light blue again. I felt my body grow and my ears grow longer and my tail also grew longer. I also felt something grow on my head, but I ignored it. What's going on? Yamada screeched, a little worried. Probably, it seems like Fuji's quirks evolving with the ice area, Aizawa said, probably done with another evolution this early. The blue light bursted to reveal my new form, but I didn't pay attention because I had a show to finish. I aimed a large fairy wind at the 2 mountains of ice to shatter them, and I used psychic to lift it and threw it in the air, and to finish it off I made a bubble beam to make it go around each other, causing it to explode into bluish glitter partials around me, and when I landed I bowed to show I finished. After I looked up I heard a lot of cheering, and most of it was from my class, I could tell, because Mina was about to fall off the bleachers with how much cheering she's doing. My body was kinda cold, but I guessed that whatever I evolved into must be some kind of ice type, so I helped pulverize the ice and hoped I wouldn't get lost while heading to the changing rooms where Momo should be. After about 3 minutes later I was officially lost again. It's kinda sad how I'm a great preformer and fighter, but I stink at directions. Another minute later I was picked up. I looked up to see Izuku and Ida. Hi Hanami, Momo told me to come look for you because she knew you would get lost, Izuku said with a small grin. Midoriya, don't be so blunt, Ida said, chopping his arms. Well, I'm thankful you two found me because I got lost again, I said with a sweat drop. Well, Hanami, have you noticed anything different? Izuku asked me, confused. I nodded and looked at him. I know it happened again, but I'm waiting so I can freak out in the changing rooms, I said to him. Ida looked concerned while Izuku looked amused. Well, Ida, I'll take Hanami to Momo, and can you tell the class we found her? Izuku asked him with a smile. Of course, Midoriya and Fuji, I'm looking forward to our match, he said, and walked away. I blanked out for a second. Wait, I'm fighting him next. I looked up at Izuku. Yup, but your match is a little while away, he said while walking down the hallway. Am I heavy? I asked, worried about that since my body is bigger. Surprisingly, no, you're the same as last time I lifted you up, you're just bigger, he said when we arrived at the girls' changing room. Izuku put me down and petted my head and left. I nudged the door open and headed in to see Momo inside making some kind of mirror. Hey Momo, you good? I asked her while walking up to her. She turned around and gasped when she saw me. "Oh Hanami, take a look at yourself, I must say you're appealing," Momo said looking at me. I looked in the mirror to see a creature that had a mostly white body with cyan-tipped feet and tail. I also noticed that the insides of my ears are blue along with a light blue thing on my forehead, and the dangling thing also tipped cyan, kind looked like icicles, and finally I had a cyan diamond on my back. The weird thing is my eyes were still the same. "Wow, I look so cute," I said, jumping up and down, feeling my throat turn cold. I opened it to shoot a rainbow of ice and froze the mirror. "Ups," I squeaked out. "Well, at least you can use ice now," Momo said with a smile. "I guess, but what were we doing again?" I asked, looking up at her. "Oh yeah, we need to get your outfit off and up to the class. You should have seen their faces when you hopped on that ice pedestal. They were priceless." She slightly laughed. "Well, let's get it off. The bows are kinda annoying," I said, wiggling my ears and tail. After we got the outfit off, we headed back to see the class. When they saw me, that all ran up to me, causing me to hide behind Momo. "A little heads up would have been nice, Fuji," Mina yelled at me, probably still shocked. "WLIW wanted to surprise the class with a performance tea to get everyone's spirits up," I said with a small smile. "Aw, you're too cute," Toru said, cooing at me. I wasn't paying attention to anything they said. I just closed my eyes and focused on my regular form and transformed. Then I transformed back into human and waited for the matches to continue. But before I forget, I walked up to Bakugo. "What do you want, Fuji?" he asked me, not even bothered by the class staring. "Well, remember what I said? I transformed back into EV and evolved back into my icy blue self." "What are yo, don't you do it?" He started to scream at me, but I promised, and I never break them, I said, shooting a rainbow ice beam at his feet, freezing them to the ground. "Fuji!" Bakugo screamed as I unevolved and transformed back into human. "Yes, Bakugo?" I asked like I didn't do anything. "Unfreeze me," he shouted, gaining more of our class's attention. "She didn't?" I heard Kirishima holding back his laughter. "Oh, she did," Mina said, cackling a storm. "Oh boy, she's dead," 𝗧𝗲 said, looking at me. Soon Bakugo was able to get out of my ice, but was currently being held back by 𝗧𝗲, Mina, and Kirishima while I was sitting by Izuku with my head on his shoulder. "So, if this happened with ice, if I lit myself in fire, would it happen like that again?" I asked him with a grin, thinking about how to set myself on fire. "Well, I'm not gonna say to light yourself on fire, but possibly since you covered yourself with ice, maybe fire will work too?" Izuku started to mumble. "And my match with Ida was after Bakugo and Kirishima's match. I just hope my training will pay off to match his speed. Oh, seems like Hanami already has a plan to go against Ida. I wonder what she will do. Of course, I know I'm the author. And did you expect 𝗧𝗵𝗃? Fun fact number 19. When Hanami evolved into 𝗧𝗵𝗃, her fur shot out snowflakes around her, causing the temperature to lower, and poor Midnight was freezing after Hanami finished her performance. Fun fact number 20. I once almost put a spoiler in the fun facts, and I actually almost posted it. I was lucky I reread it. Fun fact number 21. When Hanami makes her moves, it takes her a few hours to get used to using them, and sometimes the move she wants make won't let her until she trains her body to withstand it. It's why I haven't used any op moves like Hyper Beam or Hydro Pump. Fun fact number 22. This chapter was finished on my birthday, November 21st. Warning, possible BLD warning and cussing warning. Action thoughts. Texting Hanami's POV. It was currently Kirishima and Bakugo's match. I was sitting on Izuku's lap in human form, asking him how fast could Ida get. "Well, Hanami, if you can immobilize his legs, then you could win the match easily," he said with a smile. "Yeah, I had a plan, but I just got it, so I don't know if I could pull it off, so I'm going to go with 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃, I said with a grin. "What 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃? Izuku asked me, confused. I finally named the form I got at USJ. "Since I say 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃 without a translator, I'll name it that," I said to Izuku. "Oh, so you're gonna use your ribbon to grab his legs, right?" he asked me. I shook my head. "No, we're going to fight a speed-on-speed battle since it's my specialty. If that don't work, I'm going to do him like I did the Nomu with less force," I said, remembering my training with Aizawa about restraint. "Well, his weakness is his legs, so aim for them," Izuku informed me, looking at his notebook. I nodded, determined, but then the announcement went off and announced Bakugo the winner, so I looked over to Izuku. "Well, I guess my match is next," I said as I got up off his lap and walked off as Izuku went back to the benches. Apparently Midnight came to get me because she said I got lost too easy. Well, I guess it's true, but now I was at the entrance of the arena. They already have introduced Ida, so it was my turn. Now also from Hero Course Class 1A, our favorite EV girl Fuji Hanami. Yamada screaming rang through the stadium. I walked out of the entrance in my EV form, not surprising my classmate on the other side of the arena. I looked over to 𝗧𝗍. I hope we have a good battle, 𝗧𝗍, I said, bowing down. He bowed back. I hope so to Fuji-san, he replied. Midnight got back where she was and cracked her 𝗬𝗧𝗍𝗔𝗍𝗪 start. She shouted. 𝗧𝗍 ran towards me and I used agility to dodge his leg from kicking me. I waved my tail and sent Swift at him and the ground, giving about 20 seconds most to evolve. I focused on myself and glowed blue since there were cameras everywhere. I'm sure everyone in my class who saw my form at USJ will know what I'm planning. Whoa, what form is that, Eraserhead? Yamada yelled out. That is Sylvian, her first evolution, and she got it from the USJ attack while being thrown around. He didn't have to say that. I'm gonna get him back later. I'm going to steal his sleeping bag later. Meanwhile, in the bleachers, Izuku's POV. Bet you didn't expect that. As soon as Puppy started to evolve, I knew 𝗧𝗍 would lose. I saw 𝗔𝗲𝗧𝗟 walk over to me. Midoriya, can I ask a question? 𝗔𝗲𝗧𝗟 asked me. Sure, 𝗔𝗲𝗧𝗟, what is it? I said with a big smile. Well, you know Fuji the best, so when did she get that form and how does she fight with it? 𝗔𝗲𝗧𝗟 asked me, gaining that attention of the girls except Yaoyorozu since she already knows. Well, as you know, Hanami was with Aizawa-sensei during the USJ attack, but she didn't just fight low-ranked criminals. She fought the winged 𝗵𝗄 that the villains brought with him. I stopped a second to see if they were listening. They nodded for me to continue. She was thrown around a lot, but before the 𝗵𝗄s could grab her, Todoroki froze it so we could move her, but before we moved her, ribbons sprouted from her fluff and she evolved into Sylvian, I said, remembering all that happened during the attack. Wait, you said 𝗵𝗄s, not 𝗵𝗄. Do you mean that she fought both of them with her injuries? 𝗬𝗲𝗄𝗧 screeched out worriedly. I nodded. Yep, and she fights with those 4 ribbons. If she does 𝗧𝗍 like she did the flying 𝗵𝗄 from USJ, she might break a bone or two, I said with a wince. Looking back at the arena, the girls, just look at the appealing creature that appears out from the smoke. Hanami's POV. I evolved myself into Sylvian, hoping I made the right call. After I felt the transformation complete, I jumped out of the smoke and raised my speed with agility, causing me to glow a little. 𝗧𝗍 was almost able to kick me, but I knew this would happen, so I used my ribbons and grabbed his leg before he kicked me, and his eyes widened. Whoa, she can use those things. Yamada screeched. Offended Yamada, their ribbons. Fuji is specialized in capturing her opponent rather than fighting, but she decided to fight this round, Aizawa said. Happy with her speed improvement, I threw him back a little back and opened my mouth to see my Moonblast form in front of me, so I blew a bit and it flew towards 𝗧𝗍 fast, making him move, and it hit the ground and it exploded the ground. When he dodged it, I ran around him for about 4 minutes trying to get him near the edge, and it worked cause he was breathing right by the edge of the arena. So I booked it to the other side of the arena to finish my plan on getting him out of bounds. What is Fuji doing? Yamada asked Aizawa. She had a plan from the beginning of the match. I'm not surprised though, Aizawa said, looking at the pink creature. I focus my power in my throat and start to make noises. I called it hyper voice. Surprisingly, this time it came out in hearts. It should be loud enough to make 𝗧𝗍 covered his ear, and he did, so that gave me enough time to grab his arms and legs and lifted him up like a starfish and dropped him out of the arena. Fuji Hanami is the winner. Midnight shouts, causing an uproar. I decided to stay in my form and pick 𝗧𝗍 up by the torso and extended my ribbons up to the stands, and I lifted myself up with Psychic, and Izuku grabbed me when I reached the rails. Now I was in his arms yet again and 𝗧𝗍 approached us. I must say it was a good fight, Fuji. I appreciate you going all out on me, he said, bowing towards me. 𝗧𝗍, I had a great match too, so thank you. I nodded at him as a thank you. I jumped off Izuku and unevolved and transformed back into human and decided to sit on his lap like earlier. So how did I do? I asked him with a big smile. Well, I saw 3 new moves, so mind telling me about them? He asked, holding a pink notebook with Hanami's moves on it, and I giggled at his excitement. Well, the first one ain't a new move, but I call it agility. It boosts my speed. I used it in the quirk apprehension test. I said, what about that pink ball? I heard a voice, so I turned around to see 𝗵𝗄. Well, Moonblast is a move I will use to either make a smoke screen or distract opponents, but it explodes when touched, so I need to be careful while using it. I can currently make 1 at a time, but I hope in the future I will be able to make multiple at a time, I said, remembering how many times it blew up in my face during training. Well, is the last one a special one, or is it supposed to look like that cause you looked a little shocked when it fired out? Izuku asked me, confused. I nod. I was inspired by Present mic's quirk, so I called it echoed voice. It makes a loud frequent sound but I can't hear it, so I asked Izuku-sensei if there was any sound and he told me to never do that again, so I've been saving it as a secret move. I replied to Izuku's question. So you have any more moves? Momo asked me with curiousness in her voice. Well, I have a water attack I call bubble beam. It sends a high pressure bubble like beam towards my opponent. If I'm lucky they'll be confused for a few minutes, I said as Izuku jotted down everything in his notebook. I didn't tell them about my trump card move yet since I haven't used it yet. Thanks, Hanami. Izuku grinned at me. I nodded at him and noticed Todoroki walking towards me and Izuku. I hope we have a good battle, Midoriya, he said, confusing me. I look over to the screen to see it's Izuku versus Todoroki next. Izuku, please do me a favor. I asked him. Yes, Hanami. He said, looking at me. Don't break all your bones this time, I said with a straight face. I can't promise, but I'll try, he said with a grin and a fist in the air. When they left, I transformed and decided to try and get used to my ice form, so I transformed and sat next to Momo, blowing some cold air out of my fur to cool my classmates off since it was pretty hot outside. So who do you think is gonna win? Momo asked me with a curious look. Well, it all goes to an endurance match between the two idiots, I said worriedly, looking at the arena. She looked at me with a confused face. Well, Todoroki refuses to use his fire, so he will eventually get frostburn or freeze over, and Izuku breaks his bones when using his quirk, so it'll be a endurance to who lastest longer unless Izuku can convince him to use his fire, I said as I looked down at the two boys who were staring at each other. I see what you mean now, Momo says while looking at Todoroki. It's so obvious you're crushing on Todoroki, I said, looking over to her as Izuku just broke a finger. I swear I'ma kill him after his match. Well, maybe I mean you and Midoriya are obvious, plus you all have a kid. She whispered to me. Shoo, I said and pointed to Jiro, who was really close to us, with my paw. Midoriya just broke another finger, Momo said, pointing at him. I swear if he breaks another one he'll be facing Recovery Girl's wrath, and it ain't pretty either, I said her hero name so Momo knew who I was talking about. Todoroki looks like he's hitting his limit with his ice, Momo said, looking at Todoroki. I then decided to listen to their conversation. It's your quirk, not his, Izuku screamed at him, and Todoroki bursted into flames. Whoa, I heard Momo say, but I knew what was about to happen, so I ran up to the railing and used a work-in-progress move I call Reflect, and it went around the arena, blocking everyone from injuries from flying debris. So I put my paw on the railing and a glass-like barrier surrounded the audience and stadium, making a few of my classmates and pros look to where I was. When the both attacked each other, there was an explosion and my Reflect barely held up, so I let it down and fell down on the ground, landing on my front paws with Momo running up to me looking worried. Hanami. She picked me up and sat back down and put me on her lap. I'm okay, Momo just took more out of me than I thought, and it was a work-in-progress move, so it will do that, I said, breathing out frosty breath. Well, I guess Todoroki won, Momo said, pointing at Izuku, who was knocked out outside the arena. I jumped off Momo's lap and ran to Kyo's office. After transforming back into Sylvian, I approached the door and nudged it open to see Chiyo lecturing Yagi and Izuku both, so I just walk in and sit at the door until they noticed me, which wasn't long since Chiyo turned around and saw me. Ah, Hanami, you here to knock some sense into your boyfriend? She asked causally, making me blush. We ain't official yet, I mumbled, looking down. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you two were already together, Yagi said, bowing. We get it a lot, but now, I turned to Izuku. Yubaka, now I'll have to make sure Eri knows that breaking bones is not normal. I whacked him gently in the head with a ribbon, but my ribbon glowed pink and his fingers weren't broken anymore. I jumped back looking at Chiyo and tilted my head confused. Are you tired at all, Izuku? I asked him cautiously. No, but I'm pretty sure my arm's still broken, he said with a smile. Could you try it again? Chiyo asked me calmly. I nodded and wrapped my ribbon around his arm gently, and my ribbon glowed pink again, and I noticed Izuku's arm was slowly healing. Alright, that's enough, dearie. I don't know if there's any drawbacks for you, and you're fighting Todoroki next if I'm correct, Chiyo said with a smile. I look over to Izuku. How did you get him to use his fire? I asked him, making both Yagi and Chiyo turn to me. I swear to God, if you set yourself on fire, I'll kill you myself, child. Chiyo tried whacking me with her cane, but I dodged it and it hit the unexpected victim, poor Yagi. Oh. He crouched down in pain. I have a prediction on my quirk and I plan to test it against Todoroki, I said to Chiyo, and that is. She asked curiously. When I preformed, I surrounded myself with ice and I evolved, so what if I evolve based on my surroundings like a grassy field or during a storm? I said, looking at myself in a mirror. Well, if that's the case, what would 𝗬𝗵𝗲 be? Izuku asked, confused. I looked at him. It had to be friendship or love because I was defending the class and protecting Aizawa. I said, remembering how I evolved, and shook my ribbons around at the thought. If you're positive about this, then I won't stop you, but I'll need another BLD test to make sure you're correct, Chiyo said, pulling out a needle, causing me to back up until I was picked up surprisingly by Yagi, who put me on Izuku's bed, and Izuku just grabbed me and petted my bow on my ear, which made me purr out loudly. Well, I found your weak spot in this form, Izuku said with a grin. Just pet me. I whined as I plopped down on his body that was sitting up on his bed, causing everyone to laugh. Then people busted into the room, but I just stayed still, not noticing them because Izuku wouldn't stop petting me, and Chiyo got her BLD sample and I didn't even notice. How is Midoriya? I heard Ida ask Chiyo. She laughed and pointed to where we were. I was currently on top of Izuku as he was laying down, scratching my head, quietly laughing at me. Fuji. Everyone that was at the door screeched. I look up, not even noticing them because of the scratches. Is she allowed up there? Ida asked Chiyo, concerned. Well, considering she just healed Midoriya up, so I wouldn't need to do surgery. Yes, she is, but it will still scar. She nodded. Hello, sir, who are you? 𝗬𝗧𝗏 asked to Yagi. I looked over to 𝗬𝗧𝗏. He's a specialist who visits the severe injured people, and he works with our recovery girl, I said, looking at Chiyo, and she nodded. Oh well, next match is bakugo and 𝗳𝗏𝗵𝗃𝗍 said, chopping his hands. I nodded, knowing I'll be fighting soon. I already have a plan against Todoroki, I said shyly, looking at Ida and 𝗬𝗧𝗏. Really? They said, astonished. I talked to them. I nod. Well, I look forward to seeing it, Fuji-san, Ida said, chopping his hands, and they all left. I look at the TV screen to see I'm in the final four, and we had a 20-minute break, so I jumped off the bed. I'm going to go visit Eri, I said to Izuku, and walked out before he could say anything. When I got to both Aizawa and Yamada were at, I used a ribbon to open the door to see them both facing the door. Hey, Shota and Yamada, I greeted both of them. They both looked at me. How the heck did you convince Nizu to let you do that? Yamada said to me, shocked. Well, he was complaining about how he had nothing to do during it, so I offered to help if I could use my translator, I said, looking at the sleeping Eri in Shota's sleeping bag. So you're fighting Todoroki next, right? Yamada asked me. I nodded. Yup, and I have a plan, and I have a theory on my quirk. When I said the second part, they perked up. And that is? Shota asked, curious. Well, when I evolved today, I covered myself with ice, so maybe it due to my surroundings like a water area or a grassy field, I said, thinking more about it. So you're gonna try to set yourself on fire? Shota said, glaring at me like I kicked a cat. I nod my head. Yup, if I am able to get him to use fire, I could possibly evolve again. If I do, it will hopefully be a fire type and I'll be immune to fire, but if that don't work, I'll immobilize him, I said with a grin. What's your plan to immobilize Todoroki? Probably already knowing what I was planning, I untransform and evolved back into the ice form. I will use ice against ice, I said. You'll need a name for this form too, Yamada said, looking at my new form. Can you unclip the translator? I asked Yamada. He nodded and unclipped it. Now anything. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏. Yamada clipped on the translator again. 𝗧𝗏 is what this form says, Shota huffed, looking at me. I nodded. So how long do I have until Bakugo fights 𝗳𝗏𝗵𝗃𝗍? I asked them. Well, in about 10 minutes the matches will start again, Yamada said, looking at the clock. Well, since Eri's asleep, I'll head back to Izuku and bug him, I said with a grin. Well, have fun doing that, little listener, Yamada said quietly so he didn't wake Eri up. I nodded and left to go back to Kyo's office. When I got back, I nudged the door and they all looked at the door to see who entered. Hanami, I see you changed again. Yagi looked at me with a smile. Yup, and I finally got control of my icy self, I said, jumping up and down a little bit excited. Calm yourself, dearie. Have you found a name for this one yet? Chiyo asked me while checking Izuku's arms. Well, I decided to go with 𝗧𝗏𝗏. It's what I say without a translator, I said, looking at Izuku, who was gesturing for me to come closer. So I walked up to him and sat beside his bee and accidentally let out some cool air. Definitely a ice user? Izuku yelped at the sudden cold air around him. Sorry, I said as I unevolve and jump up to his bedside. So do I get to know your battle plan? Izuku asked me with a smile while petting my fluffy stomach. Well, I want a fair match between me and Todoroki, so I'm going to try and immobilize him with ice, I said while trying not to purr. Well, it may work, but remember he uses ice, so if you can get him to overuse his ice then you may have a chance, Izuku told me, and then there was a knock on the door and Chio came in with some papers. Hanami, I have the BLD work results and I have some big news from what I've seen, she said with a smile, so I sat up to listen. From your BLD work it seems your quirk is able to merge with any kind of terrain, but this means you have more weaknesses than one, Chio said flipping through paperwork. Interesting, do you have any more info? I asked her. She shook her head. No, but I'll be sending this to Aizawa so he can look through it. The only thing that concerns me was your low iron, but I'm still looking through the BLD work. If I find anything I'll let you know, she said, handing me some iron gummies. 𝗵𝗃 and Izuku were currently heading back to the bleachers before Bakugo vs Tokoyami. I transformed back into human so I could hold Izuku's hand on the way. I think he knows because I swear he smirked when I grabbed his hand. As we approached the bleachers I saw Momo and Todoroki talking. I kinda shipped them. But when she saw me she grabbed Todoroki's hand and dragged him over. Hanami. Momo speed walked over to me and hugged me. Momo, I whispered to her, oh right? She let go of me and I backed up a little and turned to Todoroki and bowed down. Please treat me as an equal on the battlefield, I told Todoroki, and he looked surprised but nodded at my request, and I hope he does keep it. Oh, that's right, you both fight next, right? Momo asked me. We both nod. Why, yeah, I just hope I put up a good fight, I mumbled, and I got smacked gently on the head. I looked to see Todoroki putting his hand down to his side. Fuji, remember on the battlefield, never doubt yourself, it could get you killed, he said looking down at me. My eye widened before I nod and smile. Hi, I said as I look over to the two boys fighting in the arena. We all sat down and I grabbed Izuku's hand again. When I did he slightly tightened his grip on my hand. The match was soon over when Tokoyami surrendered. Izuku then stood up. Well, it's your match now, he said smiling. I just hope I can beat him. I said this was kinda a filler but not a filler at the same time. Who do you think is gonna win, Todoroki or Hanami? Fun fact number 23. Hanami name was actually going to be a non-Japanese name. Fun fact number 24. Aizawa was generally worried about Hanami when she admitted she was gonna try and set herself on fire. Warning, possible BLD warning and cussing warning. Action thoughts texting. As I head to my match I saw midnight coming around the corner. Come on Hanami, your match is coming up, are you nervous? She said as she started to walk away, so I transformed and started to walk with her. In case you forgot what she looked like transformed, well, of course I'm nervous, but if I win I'll be fighting Bakugo, I said watching my steps so I don't fall. Well, if you win your little boyfriend may take you out on a date. She wiggled her eyebrows at me. We're not official yet, midnight, I said, my white coat showing my blush. Well, good luck kiddo, I'm rooting for you, she said as she walked back to her area while leaving me at the entrance. First we have our fire and ice user from class 1A, Todoroki Shoto. Yamada voice filled the air and I heard cheering. And from our other corner we have Fuji Hanami from class 1A, personally my favorite student, Yamada yelled while I walked out of the entrance area. When we both reached the center we nodded each other. I want a clean and youthful fight, Midnight said while cracking her WHP. We both go to our side of the arena, and when she cracked her WHP Todoroki almost instantly shot ice towards me, and I jumped out of the way and sent a fairy wind at his ice, shattering it and sending blue and sparkles everywhere. Wow, these two ain't playing around, Yamada yelled into the mic. He glared at the shattered ice and sent more at me, making me jump in the air and send a swift towards the ice, shattering it again, causing yellow and blue sparkles around the area. You don't have a chance if you only use your ice, I yelled, surprising Todoroki since I never yell. You're just like Midoriya, Todoroki said looking at me. If you're fighting me you're gonna give it your all, I yelled, hearting my tail and slamming it on the ground, causing a dent in the ground, bringing up a cover, so I tunneled underground. As soon as I tunneled underground I sent a swift to the surface and ran up the tunnel and headbutt Todoroki in the chest, causing him to slide a little. He sent more ice at me, making me send a moon blast at it, completely shattering it once again. I also noticed his skin is starting to freeze a little. Are you just going to freeze yourself? I asked him while he just glared at the benches, probably his dad from what Izuku told me. I threw a swift at him to try and distract him. It's our fight, not his, and if you don't treat me I'll walk out of bounds right now, I screamed, causing flames to burst out of his right side. I heard some cheering. He sent a big wave of fire at me, so I sent a swift at him. I noticed my body was getting hot, but I needed more firepower, so I ran towards him, surprising most people because I usually don't fight head-on. I prefer hit and run. As soon as I jumped in the air was when 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 shot a big wave of fire at me, and since I didn't think about this I didn't have time to dodge and I got hit straight on, sending me into the ground, leaving a big dust cloud. OW. That will hurt in the morning. Yamada said, wincing in the mic. I got back up and my body started to get hotter and hotter until my fur started to spark flames and I felt my body get bigger and my neck fluff got fluffier along with my tail. I felt heat at the back of my throat and I jumped out of the smoke and opened my mouth and a blast of fire came out of my mouth, and when I landed I look at my paws to see reddish orange fur. 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏's eyes widened and he brought a ice shield up just in time. I should thank you 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏. By my body heating up to super high temperatures it caused a new form to rise from the ashes, so I thank you, but it's time to end this, I said as I felt my throat heat up again. Wow, it seems like Fuji knew what she was doing. Yamada said as he looked down at the now red and yellow fluff ball. 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 started to send a bunch of ice towards me to try and trap me, but I decided to try something. Can you still move? I heard Midnight yell to me. Yeah. I yelled and started to focus on my body head. I felt water start to drip, and when I was able to see the field I fired a fairy wind and shattered it when I walk out of the ice. He tried sending another huge thing of ice, so I opened my jaws. I felt my teeth set on fire and I ran towards the ice. Is she crazy? Yamada screeched through the mic. No, by the look in her eye she has a plan, Izuku said, looking at his second protege who was running towards the ice. As soon as I could make contact with the ice I bite down, breaking it in half, and ran towards 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏, growing in size and headbutting him out of the ring before he could move. Fuji Hanami is the winner. Midnight says, cracking her WP, and I finally felt the heat getting to me, so I plopped down on the ground. I soon felt a cold sensation and looked up to see 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 freezing the ground below me. What nice sportsmanship, good job you two. Yamada screeched through the mic and I had a smack, so I guess Izuku hit him. 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 put his icy hand on my yellow tuff on my forehead and then picked me up. Can you take her to Recovery Girl's office? Midnight asked him, and he nodded. On the way there 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 was cooling me down from my overheating body. When we got to Kyo's office she was already there with a ice-like bed. I had a feeling I was about to get lectured. Thank you for bringing her, young man, but I need to have a word with her, Chiyo said, smiling at me. As soon as 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 left I felt something being placed on my back. Your body temperature is around 120 degrees and that's very hot, but you should cool down before your final match, Chiyo said, turning on the ice-like bed and backed up as the lid shut me in and let out a cool breeze. Now if I was not evolved right now I probably would be shivering, but it just feels like a small wind blowing by, so I closed my eyes and enjoyed the cool breeze. After a while I heard the door open, so I opened my eyes and saw Momo and Izuku, so I smacked my fluffy tail against the lid hoping they noticed me. Momo saw me first and walked up to the bed and went to open it. Don't open that yet, dear, I have to turn it off. They both turned around to see Recovery Girl walking in with an advanced thermometer. She walked up to the bed and pushed the button, and then the lid opened, revealing my new look. Wow, Hanami, you look appealing. Momo said while holding up a mirror. I had reddish orange fur now, but my tail and fluff are like a sandy yellow, and some fur on the top of my head, but my eyes were still the same. Wow, I look so pretty, I said, looking at myself. Chiyo placed a thermometer on my back, and when it beeped she took it off of my back. Well, it seems the lowest this form can go is about 100 degrees, so you're naturally warmer than the average human in this form, she informed me, showing me the thermometer. I nod. When's the finale match? I turned to Izuku. Well, they said in about 30 minutes they'll start the finale match, you against Kaken. Izuku said, looking at me. Well, since I still have time I want to walk around, I said, standing up and jumping of the bed, almost falling, but Izuku caught me. Well, be careful, and if anything weird happens take notes on it, Chiyo said to Izuku, who was handed a notebook. All three of us walked out of her office and made our way to the bleachers where our class was talking to each other, and Mina noticed that we have returned. She looks so fluffy. Mina squealed, catching the class's attention. I felt my throat start to get too warm, so I looked away from them, confusing them, and I opened my mouth and fire came out and my body cooled down. I looked back over to see Izuku standing there writing stuff down while most of the class slowly backed away, probably because they don't want to get burned by my hot body. I focused on my fluffy white body and I felt my body temperature go down, so I looked down at my paws to see white, so I go to jump on Izuku's lap. I'm nervous for my next match, I said, looking at the arena which was currently being fixed. Well, all I can say is 𝗧𝗵𝗃 reflexes are quick, so you'll need to be quicker, he said, looking over to the blonde who was with Kirishima. Well, I need to come up with a strategy, I said to him and jumped out of his lap. I'm gonna go walk around, I said while going down the stairs and walking until I saw a vending machine with a bench next to it, so I sat there to think. Hey Fuji-san. I looked up to see Hado and Togata. Oh hey, how are you enjoying the first year festival? I asked them. It's been great, but why do you look like you're thinking took hard? Togata asked me. Well, if you saw the previous match then you should know my next battle. I mumbled out, sulking. Well, if you're fighting explosions then use water. Hado said with a grin. Well, I would, but I only have one water attack, I said looking at her. Then use a substitute. Togata said to me and walked away with Hado. A substitute. Oh, I understand. Well, I guess I'll head to the announcement box and see Eri in my new form. I felt my body heat up and I began walking to the announcement box. When I got there I scratched at the door and I heard footsteps, and then the door clicked open and Yamada looked down to see me. Oh hey little listener, here to see Eri? He asked me. I nodded and walked in to see Eri awake mama. She ran up to me and wrapped her arms around my fluffy neck. Hey sweetie, how are you? I asked her while laying down on the floor. I'm great mama, I saw your fight. I was so scared when you were surrounded by ice, but then you burst it through. You were so pretty, she said, making a boom gesture. I giggled. Well, am I fluffier now? I asked her. She got on my back since I was laying down, but I got a tiny bit bigger so she wouldn't fall off. Yup, and mama, you're also warmer, she added, shoving her face into my fur. You said you had a plan. Against Bakugo. I looked over to Aizawa. I nodded. Well, I got some advice, I said, smiling while Aizawa raised a brow. From who? You weren't in the stands, he said while looking at me. Well, I met Togata and Hado in the halls. I told him what Togata told me. Well, your fight will be in like 10 minutes, but remember Bakugo won't go easy on you, Aizawa said while eyeing Yamada. I look at Eri, who was hugging my back. Eri, remember, if I lose don't be mad at Bakugo, okay? I told her. She nodded, and I looked at the clock to see I had 8 minutes to get to the entrance. I just hope I can put up a good enough fight against Bakugo. Seems like Flareon has entered the chat. I wonder what will happen next. Fun fact number 25. Aki was originally going to be a cat or bunny. Fun fact number 26. When Hanami's body temperature went up, she heated the air around her, causing people in the stands to sweat from her overheated body. And you should know Flareon can go over 1000 degrees. I think. Warning, may have BLD and cussing. Warning, warning, fluff. Warning, warning. Action thoughts. Texting Hanami's POV. As I made my way to the entrance, I decided to unevolve and turn into 𝗧𝗵𝗃. As I walked through the hall, I noticed Midnight walking down the hallway, and when she saw me she speed up and made her way towards me. Hanami, it's almost time for your match, she informed me, and I nodded. I'm kinda nervous for this match, I said to her. Well, everyone is waiting for this match, so all I can say is good luck, she said while guiding me towards the entrance. When we got there I noticed that Bakugo was already in the arena. Yamada must have introduced him already. Finally, our foxy girl Fuji Hanami has arrived, Yamada shouted as I walked into the area. Midnight was already on her stand to start the match. I looked over to Bakugo to see him glaring at me. Sub-Zero, you better not hold back, he shouted at me. That's a new nickname. Let's give him a show they won't forget. I said start. Midnight shouted and cracked her double key again. I opened my mouth and shot a beam of ice toward Bakugo and trapped him in a sphere of ice, only to hear explosions, and he busted out of the ice like a mole. It's impossible to restrain me with ice, Fuji, you should know that, he said as he launched at me with explosions. As soon as he almost reached me I jumped out of the way and shot another beam of ice at him, and I was able to freeze his lower body. I unevolved, which seemed to be a mistake because he finished blowing up the ice, holding him down. Come on Fluff Cloud, fight me, he shouted at me and lunged at me. I seems they're equal in strength. What do you think, Eraserhead? Yamada asked him. No, Fuji and Bakugo are definitely at different strengths, but they both probably don't want to cause so much damage to the arena again, Aizawa said back to Yamada. Bakugo exploded the ground next to me, so I burrowed under the ground to dodge his attack. Come out and fight me, I heard him scream. I soon reached where I wanted to be and slowly dug out a hole so I could have time to transform into my latest form. As soon as I felt my body heat go up, I looked from behind the ice and jumped over him and shot a blast of fire at him, hitting him, but he probably shot an explosion at me at the same time because I was sent back from him a bit. This probably ain't the best form to fight with, but 𝗧𝗵𝗃 didn't work, so I may need to transform back into human and fight him hand-to-hand combat. I know he wouldn't like it if I just used Sylveon and threw him out of the ring. Ion evolve again and transform back into human. Bakugo wanna finish our spar? I asked him while tilting my head, and he lunged at me, and I noticed that he was going for a right hook, so I caught it and twisted his hand. Then I locked my legs over his neck and used my body weight, which wasn't much, and throw him over me. Don't own it, but it's the best I could explain it, so I decided to just show it. Meanwhile, in the bleachers, Izuku's POV, as soon as the match started, I couldn't look away, probably because she was keeping up with 𝗂𝗏𝗄's reflexes, which surprised a lot of our classmates. Since she is a shy person, they probably expected her combat to be sloppy, but I know better since she can beat me without any effort. Wow, she's keeping up with Baku, bro. Kirishima shouted, surprised. Of course she can. Remember that Aizawa-sensei trained her before school even started, I said, not taking my eyes off the match. That's not fair to the rest of us, 𝗵𝗃𝗄 whined, and I turned to the whining boy. 𝗵𝗃𝗄, she worked hard to reach the level she is today, and life will never be fair, so 𝗧𝗑𝗍 it up, I said, glaring at him and turning back to the match. Remind me not to anger Midoriya, bro. I heard Kirishima yelp back to Hanami. As soon as I felt a hand on my arm, I was flipped onto my back and pinned by Bakugo, so I turned my body at a certain degree and kicked him in the chest and sent him back far enough to get back up. I swinged my tail and sent a swift at him, hoping he would get hit so I could possibly knock him out of bounds, but he just sent an explosion at them and it bursted into small yellowish red sparkles. He dashed up to me and slightly pulled his left arm back, trying to fake me out, so I went on his left side and caught his punch again and pulled his arm over my body and threw him over my shoulder and slammed him into the ground. My, it seems like Fuji has slammed him into the ground. Yamada said a bit to Happy. I felt my eyes get warm, and I silently started to lift up debris from our battle earlier, but Bakugo saw what I was doing when my eyes started to glow. Wait, no you don't, he screamed and launched a big explosion towards me, and unlucky me was hit straight on, but I was able to lift most of the rubble before letting it go. I'll have to thank you, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏, for this idea, because I noticed that bigger explosions take more out of him, but I didn't notice him behind me until last second. Die. I was hit in the back, causing me to fly and hit my head on the ice I made earlier, and I noticed my vision begin to blur, so I decided to use my secret move I kept hidden, but the drawback would knock me out, but I will have try if I want to beat him. I felt my body taking in the sunlight, and I saw a lime orb form above me, and it would take about 2 minutes to charge, so I needed to distract him. I felt my eyes warm up, and I picked up Bakugo and started to move him discreetly towards the orb's fire range, which probably confused the audience because I was moving him closer in the field. I soon felt that my move was ready. I only had one shot at it, so I looked towards Bakugo and grinned. Solar beam, I shouted as the pale green orb shot out a powerful blast, but my legs couldn't hold my body anymore. As soon as I hit the ground, I blacked out. I felt someone holding my hand, so I opened my eye to see Chiyo writing something down on a clipboard. Then she looked over to me. Oh, you're awake? She said as she rolled over to me on her chair. Well, who won? I asked her. Well, as soon as you blacked out, the dust cleared to show both of you knocked out, so it was a tight, Chiyo said, taking the IVs out of my arm. Well, how are they gonna settle it? I asked her, confused, since there has never been a tie for first in the UA Sports Festival. Well, they claimed Bakugo the winner because he woke up first, but he ain't happy because of that, and when they're going to have to chain him up to the podium during the awards ceremony, she said, grabbing some bandages, and started to bandage my back after rubbing cream on it. So why did I have like 6 IVs in me? I asked as she took another one out. Well, that move you used drained a bunch of nutrients from your body, so I had to hook you up to a bunch of nutrients, and Mr. Bonebreaker didn't leave your side, she told me while pointing to beside me. I turned my head to see a sleeping Izuku still holding my hand, so I tilted my head and poked his cheek with my free arm, causing him to push it away and open his eyes. Oh, hey Hanami, how are you feeling? He asked me, rubbing his thumb over my fist. Well, I feel tired, but with the recall solar beam does it's understandable until I figure out how to get energy while shooting it off. I will always pass out if I use it, I said as Chiyo put cream on my burns and bandaged them. Well, you're good to go, dear, just don't do anything rough for a day or two or until those burns go away, she said as Izuku helped me up and wrapped an arm around my waist. I better get to the awards ceremony by Chiyo, I said as we walked out the door. When we arrived at the podiums, I saw Todoroki standing on third with Tokoyami, and Bakugo was chained to a thick piece of cement and muzzled. This was too much for me, so I hardened my tail and whacked the muzzle off. Mrs. Fuji, the muzzle needs to stay on, 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 said to me. Well, muzzling a dang child ain't really responsible or nice of you, huh? I said, glaring at him, and he looked surprised, but Izuku just chuckled and patted my head, causing me to purr. I have to head back to the bleachers. I'll walk you home tonight, Izuku said as he shut the door. I turned back to the chain bakugo and started to unhook all the chains and glared at 𝗵𝗃𝗲. Now I respect you as heroes, but he doesn't need to be muzzled, just lectured. Never chain a kid because you don't know what they've been through, I said as I finished unchaining him. Now bakugo, if you go haywire again, I will smack the living daylights out of you live on TV and embarrass you, so behave, I said, giving him a terrifying glare, and he slightly nodded. I turned back to 𝗵𝗃𝗧 and asked him to help me onto the podium. A few minutes later I felt the podium start to move, so I stood straight and held my head high as the area came into view, and Midnight was standing in front of the podiums with a microphone in her hand. Now we're going to start handing out medals. She was interrupted by All Might jumping down screaming something about bringing the medals, and he walked up the podium to Todoroki and Tokoyami. Young Tokoyami, congrats on 3rd place, but you need to stop relying on your quirk and get some muscle though, he said, and turned to Todoroki. Young Todoroki, congratulations on 3rd place as well, he said, smiling. Todoroki nodded, saying he had things to settle. He then walked up to my podium. Young Fuji, congratulations on making UA's first ever tie, but we had to put someone on this podium, so we had 2 first-place medals made, so it would be fair, he said while placing the medal over my head. Oh, and be sure to meet with young Midoriya after this is over. He wanted to ask you something. He winked at Izuku, which made his eyes light up, and he then walked up to Bakugo, who was glaring at my podium. Young Bakugo, congratulations on 1st place with young Fuji, he said, grinning. It ain't gonna be like this. All Might looked confused until Bakugo grabbed my hand and yanked me up onto his podium. We're both 1st place, so we'll both be up here or neither of us will, he said while staring at All Might, who nodded and placed Bakugo's medal on him and turned around and faced the front of the stadium. All right, everyone say it with me, All Might screamed, and he turned to everyone. Thank you for your hard work, she said while the crowd screamed something else, plus ultra. The audience screamed, smiling. We all went back to the classroom, and I was still tired, so I moved my chair beside Izuku's desk and plopped my head on his shoulder, causing some of our classmates to come over to us. Mito bro, how is she still tired? Kirishima asked him, confused. Well, that solar beam drained Hanami's energy, so she's really tired, Izuku told him. So that thing she did is called solar beam? Denki asked while walking in the door, and Izuku nodded. Yeah, Hanami is tired, so after Aizawa-sensei dismisses us I'll take her home, Izuku said, which caught interest in some of our classmates. Wait, walking a girl home, Midoriya, you sly BSC? Mineta screamed at him, causing me to look up. If you don't be quiet I'll make grape jelly tonight, I said, glaring at him, and a black aura surrounded me, causing a few to back up as Aizawa walked in, but when he saw me glaring then he left. Even our teacher is scared of her glare, Mina said while pointing at me, shocked. I just put my head back on Izuku's shoulder and hid my face in his neck. I felt the stares, but I didn't care because I was tired. After about 10 minutes Aizawa came back in. All right, everyone, great job during the sports festival. I wanted you all to know that school's off for 2 days for a break, he said, and the turn towards me. Fuji, come with me and get the BLD results from Recovery Girl. We found something interesting, he said, and I nodded. Class dismissed, he said, and everyone began to leave. Izuku, will you wait for me by the gate? I asked him. Of course, you need to pick up the results so I can wait, he said, nodding. I made my way to Kyo's office and knocked on the door 3 times and opened the door to see Shota and Chio and a sleeping Eri, so I sat beside the sleeping Eri. So what did you find? I asked her, curious. Well, your quirk has many forms it can take, and from what I understand, if you got hit by an electric source then you could evolve or during night and daytime, but what made me recheck was a weird code in your DNA, Chio said, looking at me. What kind of code? I asked her, kinda scared. Well, it's only a code found if a person has multiple quirks, but yours is just one, right? Chio asked me. I nodded. From what I know, yes, I said, unsure. Well, we will monitor your quirk for now, but I think you have a boy waiting for you, Chio said, pointing to a window and handing me some papers. I look out the window to see Izuku standing at the gate, so I picked Eri up and walked down since everyone has gone home. When I got to the gate I saw Izuku, and he must have heard me because he turned around to face me. Hey Izuku, I got Eri, we can go now, I said, looking at the green-haired teen, and he smiled. Great, when we get back I wanted to ask you something, he said, looking at me. Well, let's get going, I said, and started to walk. When we got back Izuku said he had to let his mom know he was back, but he would be back, so I told him I would leave the door unlocked. I walked into Eri's room and grabbed her onesie out of her closet, then I changed her clothes and I covered her up in her bed, then I turned her light off and shut the door. Well, puppy, is she asleep? I turned around to see Izuku sitting on the couch and I nodded. Yeah, she is. So what did you want to ask me? I asked him and his cheeks went a little red. Well, I wanted to know if you wanted to go on a date tomorrow. He looked me in the eyes, making me blush a little. Well, I guess 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏 could watch 𝗬𝗧𝗏 tomorrow, I mumbled. So is that a yes? He asked me, smiling. Yes, I'll go on a date with you. I nodded and smiled. Oh, I also got you and 𝗬𝗧𝗏 something, he said, holding a box up, making me smile. Izuku, you know you don't need to get me or 𝗬𝗧𝗏 stuff. I giggled at him. Well, I wanted to, he mumbled out. I took the box from his hand and noticed there was a purple bow and the box was a pastel blue. When I undo the bow, I opened the box to see 3 dark green rhinestone butterfly clips with little light green crystals hanging down from them that have green rhinestones decorating them. Imagine the moon is a butterfly and it's many shades of green. As I looked closer, I noticed there's a little message engraved on 2 of them behind the butterflies. Izuku, stay away, return to Izuku, Midoriya, daddy's little girl. I giggled at the messages but attached one to my hair. Thank you. I assume that the one is for 𝗬𝗧𝗏. I asked him, looking at the last one. Yup, I didn't want her to feel left out, so I got her one too, Izuku said, scratching the back of his neck, which made me giggle at him. Well, thank you, Izuku, but where are you taking me tomorrow? I asked. I tilted my head. It's a surprise, just wear something casual, he said, grinning. Well, I guess I will text 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏 and ask him to watch 𝗬𝗧𝗏, I said while yawning tired. He asked me while getting up and walking to me. Yeah, I am, but I want to cuddle, I mumbled while Izuku walked up to me and picked me up. It's either he just strong or I'm very light, probably the second one. Izuku put me down, I said while squirming in his grip. Nope, and I like the nickname, he said while walking back to the couch and sitting down and moving me to lay down on him. I just laid my head down on his chest and I felt his hand on my ears, so I twitched them. I'm surprised you're still awake, puppy, you must be tired, he said while petting my ears. Well, I don't want to fall asleep just yet, I mumbled, quietly shoving my face into his chest, causing him to chuckle. Well, seems like you're already comfy, Izuku said, grinning, and I just put my hand over his mouth to make him quiet. Shush, I whined, and I felt arms wrap around me and pull me closer, well, as close as I could get, and I felt myself doze off. Izuku's POV. When I saw Hanami close her eyes, I knew she fell asleep, so I just pulled my phone out and snapped a picture of her sleeping. And since she was attached to me like a koala, I decided to text my mom to inform her I couldn't make it home to mom. I don't think I'll make it home tonight, mom. Received from mom. Is something wrong? To mom. Send picture of a sleeping Hanami. No, I have a girl on my chest and she fell asleep and is holding on to me like a koala, so I can't move. Received from mom. Well, I'll feed 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 and take care of her. I saw how she collapsed at the festival. I put my phone back in my pocket and stare at the girl on my chest who was sleeping on me and softly petted her ears, and I saw her tail wag. Papa. I look over to see 𝗬𝗧𝗏 standing at the top of the staircase with a teddy bear in her arms. Do you need something, pumpkin? I asked her as she slowly nodded. See, can I join you both? I had a nightmare. 𝗬𝗧𝗏 looked at me with big teary eyes. Of course you can, 𝗬𝗧𝗏. I scooted over so there was room for her, and she walked over and climbed up by Hanami and snuggled into my hold. Papa, did you know Mama speaks very highly of you? She said while looking at me. She does? I asked her. Yeah, even though she complains about you breaking your bones. I sweat drop at that comment. Well, until I get control of my quirk, I will be breaking my bones, I told her, and she frowned. But does it hurt when you break your bones? She tilted her head at me. Well, yeah, it does, but I have a high pain tolerance. But I want you to know breaking bones is not normal, I told her. Don't worry, Papa. Mama already told me that, she said and yawned. Go to sleep, 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗏. I'll be here when you wake up, I told her. A few minutes later she closed her eyes and I decided to go to sleep as well, but I texted mom to drop a bag with some clothes by the front door. I also unclipped Hanami's hair clip and put it on the table beside the couch. Seems like they tied at the sports festival, and seems like bakugo is kinda scared of Hanami. Fun fact number 27. When Hanami fainted from solar beam, Izuku freaked out and rushed to recovery girl's office, making most of the girls smirk. Fun fact number 28. After Izuku ran off, Mina screamed, I bet Momo $90 they're dating, and Momo cackled, which scared the girls, and Momo got $90 from Mina. Fun fact number 30. Hanami has a studio in her house and her and 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗏 sing together a lot. They even write songs together. Action thoughts. Texting Hanami's POV. I felt something around my waist, so I opened my eyes to see green hair, so I guessed he stayed the night, but something else was wrapped around me, so I turned my head to see 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗏, who was almost between us. So I used psychic to slowly unwrap 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗏's arms from me and put her on the couch while I slowly unwrapped Izuku's arms from my waist until I felt his grip tighten, so I knew he was awake. "Izu, I need to fix breakfast and shower, can I get up?" I asked him, but I was just pulled back into his chest. "It's only 8 o'clock, puppy, why do you need to get up early?" His groggy morning voice asked me confused. "Well, I usually soak in the tub for a good 30 minutes and then I cook breakfast for me and Eri, but today I'm cooking for 3 people so I need to get up a little earlier," I said with my face in his chest. "Fine, I'll let you go, but I want hugs later," he mumbled. "Okay, I'll give you hugs later, and I will ask 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏 if Eri can stay the night since she wanted to play with 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 and I. Anyway, you can use the guest room's bathroom and there should be clothes in there," I said while walking to my room and grabbing a dress to put on after I finished my bath. After I finished my bath, I put on a yellow sundress with a purple collar and I wrapped a brown belt around my waist and I clipped my earring in and I brushed my hair and leaving it down and I noticed it grew a little, so I grabbed my salmon-colored purse after I finished and I walked out to see Izuku with wet hair and dressed in a dark blue sweater and black jeans, which is funny because I don't have any blue sweaters or jeans. I did draw most of it, but it's also a template. "Izu, I don't remember having jeans or blue sweaters, where did they come from?" I asked, curious on where he got them. "Well, my mom brought them last night and left them at the front door," he said smiling. "Well, I'm going to make breakfast, so will you wake up Eri?" I asked him sure. And he dashed off, now knowing 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏 he was already awake, so I could probably not get left on read to 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏. "So could Hitoshi or you watch Eri today?" Received from 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏. "Well, if you tell me why you need someone to watch her, then sure to 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏." "Well, Izuku asked me." Received from 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏. "On a date, I'll watch Eri, but if you're not home before 8 o'clock or I'll destroy your boyfriend." Sent to 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏. "He ain't my boyfriend." Received from 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏. "Not yet, he ain't, but my senses are tingling." Sent to 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏. "I'll bring her over after I feed her." I put my phone in my purse and decided to make eggs and sausage since it's simple. I soon heard walking in the halls, so I turned around to see Eri with wet hair and dressed in the red sweater dress I knitted for her. It took a while, but she loved it. And Izuku came in shortly after. "Morning, Mama," Eri said while smiling, and Izuku grabbed a brush and started to brush her hair since I was cooking. "Morning, sweetie, you're gonna be hanging out with 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏 and Uncle 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏 today," I said, grinning. She cheered and smiled after I finished breakfast and we all ate. I slipped on my shoes and picked Eri up after she slipped on her little brow boots. Izuku tied his red shoes on. "Ready to go?" he asked me. "Yeah, let's drop Eri off and you can take me wherever you want," I said, grinning. It was a short walk because we're neighbors, so I knocked on the door and Hitoshi answered it. "Oh, Hanami, what are you doing?" he asked, and noticed that I wasn't alone and looked at Eri and Izuku. "Well, 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏 said you and him would watch Eri for me," I said to him while Eri pounced on him for a hug. "Oh, Eri, you got a little taller?" Hitoshi said, looking at the little girl who was attached to him. "I'm going to be taller than Mama one day," she said, holding up her fist in the air. "I'm sure you will be with her height." I was about to whack him into the ground, but Izuku threw me over his shoulder and put one of his hands over my mouth. "Well, we best get going," Izuku said while smiling, and Hitoshi just grinned. "Take care of her," he said as he shut the door. After we got to the end of the walkway, Izuku finally put me down. "Why did you stop me?" I whined out, looking at him as he started to walk, so I followed him since he was taking me somewhere. "Well, if I let you hit him, you may pass that habit off to Eri, and I don't want her to randomly walk up to someone and hit them," he said, sweat dropping at the thought. "Fine, just don't do it." In class, I could already see Momo teasing me. I mumbled quietly. Now I'm tempted to pick you up in the middle of class just to see their reactions on how the cinnamon roll picked up their shyest classmate. Izuku's eyes were twinkling with mischief. "Izuku Midoriya, I swear if you do it I will bite your neck until it scars," I blurted out, and he shrugged. "Welp, come on, I found this appealing spot a few days before school even started and I want you to see it," he said as we walked into the forest and I noticed a log over a stream with a bunch of lily pads with flowers on them. "Izuku, are you sure this is safe?" I asked while poking the log. "If it wasn't safe I wouldn't have brought you here, but if your balance is bad there's a shallow end over there, but we will get our shoes wet," he said, standing on the log and offering me a hand. I grabbed his hand and we slowly made our way over the stream, and I saw a flower field with a bunch of wisteria trees around, and there was foxes and deers around, even some wolves and their pups far inside a cave from the view, and there was a few giant rocks covered in moss and flowers. "How did you find this?" I asked, looking around, and my eyes landed on a giant tree. "Well, a few days before school started I took a walk with 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 and she lead me here, and this is the only entrance into here from what I know, and if we are lucky we could see a panther and her young," he said, walking up to the tree I was staring at that had a very thick trunk and branches. "What are you doing?" I asked him as he climbed the tree and got onto a branch. "The view from up here is way better than down there, come on up." he said, offering a hand to me. I grabbed his hand and he pulled me up onto the branch, and I looked at the appealing view. Wow, it's so pretty, I said, feeling a little dizzy. Izuku must have noticed that because he grabbed my waist and pulled me onto his lap to prevent me from falling off the branch. You okay, puppy? I looked over to him and shake my head. I feel like my body is attracted to something around here and it's forcing me to transform. It's kinda like a trance, but I'm in control. As soon as I said that, my body shrunk in his arms and I was my white fluffy self, and my purse was still there on ground. Surprisingly, I looked down to see a small green glow and it was making me want to go to it. Izuku must have seen it because he got us out of the tree and approached it with me in his arms. Hanami, be careful, I'll text 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗍𝗧, he said, grabbing my phone and started to type, probably to tell 𝗧𝗪 my quirk acted up. As I approached the glow, I noticed it was a rock covered in purple flowers and moss. I reached out to touch it with my paw, and when I did, I started to glow blue again. My limbs got longer and I felt my tail grow way longer and my fluffy chest disappeared and I felt something on my head. When the blue light bursted, I held out my paw to see brown and a sandy yellow color, so I looked at Izuku and I noticed that he snapped a picture of me. Hanami, 𝗧𝗪 said to get back before 8 and it's 5 right now, Izuku said, showing me my phone, and I nodded. Do you think you can transform back? He asked, and I tried to, and I felt a wave of tiredness after I did and my legs couldn't hold my body. Luckily Izuku caught me before I hit the ground. Hanami, are you okay? He hoisted me up bridal style and started to walk towards the log. I'm fine, just tired, I mumbled out. That usually doesn't happen, so I'm a bit confused. Well then just go to sleep and we should be in 𝗧𝗪 house when you wake up, he said, smiling, and was the last thing I heard before I blacked out. I could feel my head pounding, but then I heard talking, so I kept my eyes shut to adjust to the light. Midoriya, are you sure that's what you saw? I heard 𝗧𝗪𝗧's voice ask him. I'm positive, sensei. She was practically forced to transform due to that green glow from that rock. She was also suddenly very tired after she transformed back. I also brought a piece of the rock with me, and it's still glowing, he said, and I felt him petting my ears and I couldn't hold back from purring. She's like a cat, I heard Hitoshi's voice, and I decided to open my eyes since I felt weird again. Why am I feeling that pull again? I asked him, and he held a piece of the mossy rock and I touched it, causing me to suddenly transformed, and I was surrounded by blue light and felt my limbs grow again. When the light bursted, I felt tired again and my instincts were telling me to lay in the sun, so I jumped off the couch and laid by a window and let the sun soak my skin. Well, it seems this rock triggers your quirk, so we'll send it somewhere to get analyzed, 𝗧𝗪𝗧 said as he put the rock in a Ziploc baggie. I don't want to transform back just to faint again. 𝗵𝗃𝗃. Well, 𝗵𝗃 is what you're saying, but try transforming in the sunlight. Maybe you can use photosynthesis now, 𝗧𝗪𝗧 said, crouching down and petting my head, so I nodded and stepped back into the sunlight. I focused on my human body and I felt my body grow and turn back. I was still dizzy enough to fall, but I was caught in time. You okay? I looked up to see Izuku looking worriedly at me. Yeah, I'll have to get used to being a little dizzy, I mumbled, but I felt something grab my leg. Mama, 𝗧𝗪 said, and hugged my leg. Hey sweetie, do you want to stay with Uncle 𝗧𝗪𝗧 and Yamada tonight? I asked, and she nodded, grinning. Well, I need to talk to Midoriya for a minute, 𝗧𝗪𝗧 said, and I nodded, and I went to the playroom they had for 𝗧𝗪, and 𝗧𝗪 followed me. Mama, will you play with me? She looked at me holding up her teacup set and her dress-up stuff, and I saw her grinning. Okay, let's play it, I said, smiling. 𝗧𝗪 decided to dress me in a wedding dress. She somehow got her little hands on, and she ran outside the room and brought Yamada, who took a picture and probably sent it to midnight. My poor soul, I'm going to be teased for a while about this. Little listener, you look appealing, he said, looking at me. Well, I wish I knew how 𝗧𝗪 got her hands on a wedding dress, but she won't tell me, I said, looking at said little girl who was grinning. Well, Mama, I'm not done, she said, pulling out a kid makeup set, and I suddenly had a flashback. 𝗧𝗪, sweetheart, if we're playing what I think we are, please don't get Izuku involved again, I said, remembering what almost happened last time. No, that was the main point, she said, and grabbed a suit and ran out the room, and Yamada looked confused. What's happening? He turned to me for answers. Well, last time me and Izuku played this game with 𝗧𝗪, we got away with a kiss on the cheek, but she doesn't know that, so we kept it a secret. But if she figures it out, we're doomed, I said, looking at the dress. Well, all I can say is good luck, cause I'm just gonna watch because I'm curious and I'm going to video it, he said, pulling out his phone, and I started to regret agreeing to this. Eris POV. As I ran out of the room, I saw Papa and Uncle sitting in the living room, so I walked up to them. Papa, I said with a grin, and I think Uncle knew what I was planning something, so he sent me a thumbs up. Yes, pumpkins, he said, smiling. Will you put this on and come to the playroom? I asked him grinning and I saw Uncle grab a package of flower petals, of course pumpkin, Papa said and probably went to the bathroom to change and I saw Uncle 𝗧𝗱𝗧 looking at me, "Eri, what are you planning?" He asked and I grinned, "I will make my ship sail," I said with twinkling eyes and Uncle sighed but nodded, "Do you need anything else for your plan?" He asked me and I nodded, "I need 2 rings and some flowers." I said happily, "I think I broke Uncle because he was smirking. I think I know what you're doing and I want my students to be blushing bright red after this, and if you accomplish this I'll get you a bunch of apple slices from your favorite place. But I'll get the rings and take these flower petals and put them in the playroom and don't forget to clean up your mess, okay?" He said grinning at me and handed me a bag of fake cherry blossom petals. "Okay Uncle, I promise to make them red," I said and headed back to playroom Hanami's POV. A few minutes later 𝗧𝗱𝗧 came in with 2 tiny boxes and looked at me. "You look pretty, so how does the game work?" He said to me while sitting in a chair beside 𝗵𝗲𝗏 who was snickering. "Wait, did Eri get you involved too?" I asked him, shocked he would join in her schemes. "Well, I did tell her if she got you both bright red she would get her favorite apple slices," he said, making me regret life choices again. "Mama, can you come in the closet real quick?" Eri asked, popping her head in the room, so I sighed and got up. "Good luck, kid." I heard 𝗵𝗲𝗏 mumble and I flicked my tail at him and he fell out of his chair and I heard 𝗧𝗱𝗧 snort. As soon as I entered the closet I saw Eri standing in a chair with a hairbrush and some rhinestone moon clips and a sun clip. "Sit down Mama, I'm going to brush your hair and Papa is probably in the room setting it up with Uncle 𝗧𝗱𝗧 and Hitoshi and I," she said as I sat down on the floor on my knees so Eri could reach me. After about 10 minutes my hair was decorated with moon clips and a sun clip on my left side of my hair, plus my tail was decorated with star clips. "Mama, you look so pretty," Eri said looking at me. "Well, you did it, so thank you my little styler," I said smiling and she hugged me. "You're welcome Mama, I need to check on something though," and then Eri left the room. A few minutes later 𝗵𝗲𝗏 entered the room looking horrified and in a yellow suit. "I'm never doing this ever again. How do you and Midoriya do it?" he said looking at me. "Well, Izuku and I just go along with it since it makes her happy, she deserves it," I said with a small smile. "Well, Eri wanted me to get you into the doorway. I feel bad for poor Midoriya, he was shacking like a leaf when I left," he said, handing me some flowers, and I chuckled. "Well, he was like that the first time too, plus it's kind of funny to watch him struggle sometimes," I said, walking out the door. When got to the playroom I saw Hitoshi in a purple suit and 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏 in a black suit, but the entrance of the room was covered in cherry blossom petals, but it made a path to Izuku, who was not shacking anymore but smiling, and I understood when I saw Eri staring at him with a grin. "Well, I guess I'll wait for Eri to notice me," I said while 𝗵𝗲𝗏 walked in and whispered something in Eri's ear, and she turned on a radio which made everyone quiet, and she walked to the door and opened it to reveal me, making Izuku's eye widen and my face was already red. "Come on Mama," she said, grabbing my hand and walking me down the aisle with a big smile. I looked over to see Hitoshi and 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏 grinning like psychos, and 𝗵𝗲𝗏 was recording this, probably for blackmail or to tease me with. When I reached Izuku, Eri then put my hands in his and clapped her hands. Then to my surprise Hitoshi came up and cleared his throat. "We are gathered here today to celebrate the marriage of Midoriya, Izuku and Fuji Hanami. Can the ring bearer bring up the rings?" he said, and surprising me again 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏 got up and gave Eri the boxes, and she walked up to me and Izuku with big eyes and put the rings on our fingers. "Fuji Hanami, do you take Izuku Midoriya to be your forever husband until death?" Hitoshi said, smirking at me. "I do," I said quietly. I knew Eri was gonna get her apple she was promised, and then Hitoshi turned to Izuku. "And Izuku Midoriya, do you take Fuji Hanami as your forever wife until death takes her soul?" he said, a bit too dramatic. "I do," he said, surprisingly confident, and then Hitoshi smirked. "Then you may kiss the bride," he said, smirking, and motioned to Eri, who was looking at us with big eyes. But before I could make my own move I was pulled into a kiss and my eyes widened, but I kissed back, closing my eyes, and I heard Eri squeal and cameras flashing, and Izuku broke the kiss. Finally, Eri was jumping up and down, but my face was a red mess, and 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗏 just smirked and turned to Izuku. "Well, kid, I didn't think you had it in you should just ask her," he said, grabbing Eri and 𝗵𝗲𝗏, who was snapping picture after picture, and Hitoshi just walked out looking like he saw something he shouldn't have. I was confused for a moment until hands grabbed my waist and I was met with green eyes. "Well, that went well," I said to him, and he nodded. "I wanted to ask you something but not here," he said, offering a hand, and pulled me up. "You should change out of these clothes," I said shyly, gripping onto the dress skirt. "Yeah, will meet me outside," He asked, and I nodded and walked to the closet to change. After changing and telling 𝗬𝗧𝗵𝗲 I walked out of the house to see Izuku standing there looking at the moon, so I walked next to him and grabbed his hand, causing him to look at me. "Hey, where you wanna go?" I asked him, and he grabbed my hand and pulled me to an open forest area with fireflies and deer were laying in the grass watching their young. "Before I ask you this question, can I have one dance?" He asked, holding his hand out, so I took it and he grabbed my hand and rested one on his shoulder and he held the other one his hand while his other hand was on my waist. And since I didn't want to forget this moment, I moved my phone to record our little dance. Suddenly music started to play and he guided me every step. I felt like I was floating on air when he spinned me. I followed his lead and noticed that the dance was kinda like the waltz, but when he finished he dipped me, then pulled me close and kissed me. Was when my face turned red, but I kissed him back. After we were standing back up was when he decided to pop the question. "Fuji Hanami, we have known each other for a while, we've made memories that will always make me smile, and I wanted to ask, will you be my girlfriend?" He asked with his arms open wide. Yes. I jumped into his arms and he kissed me. My tail started to wag and he must have noticed. "You must be enjoying this if your tail looks like it's a helicopter blade." He chuckled and sat down on the grass and I sat down on his. "Well, did I shock you?" Izuku asked, looking at me. My tail was still currently wagging like a happy dog. "I'll be honest, you did shock me with the kiss," I mumbled out, and he kissed me on the forehead. "I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't plan on asking you out today, but when 𝗬𝗧𝗵𝗲 did that I knew I couldn't have waited any longer," he said, pulling me closer to him. "Well, since you're already with me, wanna stay the night again?" I asked him, knowing he would ask his mom if he could. And I was right. He pulled out his phone and started to type. A few minutes later he smiled and put his phone away. "Well, I'll have to pick up some clothes, but she said as long as I'm safe she doesn't care where I'm at," he said, smiling. "Well, wanna head back?" I asked him and got off his lap. "Yeah, we'll need to stop at my place first," he said, standing up and pulling me up with him, making me smile. When we got to his house he unlocked the door, and when we walked in I saw Mrs. Midoriya sitting on the couch drinking tea, and I didn't notice a bird swooping at me until it chirped at my arm, so I held it up for the bird to land on, and the bird rubbed her head on my forehead. She was quite big for a cockatiel. She could most likely lift me up if I was transformed. "Wow, 𝗧𝗪 has never greeted anyone but Izuku or me," Mrs. Midoriya said, looking at me shocked. "Well, I'm happy to be the third person then," I said while petting 𝗧𝗪's head. "Do you want some raspberry tea?" she asked, pouring her a cup. "Sure, I love raspberry tea," I said, pouring me a cup and sitting on the couch. "Are you two dating yet? With how much he talks about you, I'm surprised he hasn't asked you yet," she said, smiling at her son whose face was BLD red. "Mom, you can't say that." Izuku whined and I giggled at them. "Well, we are dating now, but we wanted to keep it a secret for now," I said, smiling at her. "Of course I can keep it a secret, but how did my little boy confess to his lover?" she asked while Izuku walked out, probably to get his stuff and to try to ignore the question, but I guess I'll give her something to tease her son about. "Well, without 𝗬𝗧𝗵𝗲's scheming he probably wouldn't have asked me out," I said to her, smiling. "What did she do?" When she asked that, I pulled out my phone and showed her the recording Yamada sent me about 50 minutes ago. "Oh my, how did she get a hold of a wedding dress?" she asked, confused, and I shrugged. "I have no idea how she got a hold of it, Mrs. Midoriya, but I have a feeling she put it away to dress me up again one day," I said, and shivered while Mrs. Midoriya laughed. "Dear, I think I told you to call me 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗏, but if I didn't, please do," 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗏 said, smiling, and I nodded. We heard footsteps and Izuku came downstairs with a bag full enough for a night or two. "Ready to go, Hanami?" he asked, grinning, and I nodded. "Yup, let's go," I said, and as we said our goodbye I felt a weight on my head and I saw wings drooping on the sides of my heads. "𝗧𝗪, I know you want to go with Izuku, but you can't go with them," 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗏 said as she tried to lure her off with a banana treat while she just sat there on my head. "Well, we know 𝗧𝗪 won't fly off, so I guess she could come with us since she would come back here if she got bored. I usually leave my window open for her," Izuku said, petting the top of the bird's head, and she chirped, nodding. "Are you both sure the bird don't have a quirk? She seems very intelligent," I asked, looking at the flame-like markings on her wings and a sun mark around her right eye now since she was sitting on a table. "Well, no, I didn't think animals could have a quirk. I mean, we did pay a lot for 𝗧𝗪 though, so I won't be surprised if she did," 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗏 said, and I had an idea, so I turned to the bird and transformed. "Hello, 𝗧𝗪, can you understand me?" I asked the bird, and she nodded. "Can you understand me, 𝗵𝗃𝗏𝗏?" She tilted her head and I jumped and looked at the bird who just talked to me. "So do you have a quirk, or are those just special markings?" I asked her, and she held her wings up to show 2 crescent moons on her wings, and Izuku grabbed a notebook and started jolting stuff down. "Well, 𝗵𝗃𝗏𝗧𝗏, Izuku's mate, I can use the sun and moon's energy to boost my own. If I use enough of the energy I could use ice and fire only during the respected hour though, she said as the sun mark glowed a little. And why are you calling me that? I asked, confused and embarrassed. Well, from what I understand, Izuku loves you and you have a kid, so it makes you both official in the animal world, plus you're technically half animal, she said, gesturing to my transformed self and Izuku making the boy tilt his head confused. Well, since you seem to like me, how about we train that quirk of yours, and if you're good I'll let you meet Eri, I said to the bird who was now wrapping her wings around me, nodding, confusing Inko and Izuku. I transformed back. And I picked up the cockatiel and turned to Izuku. We have a bunch of stuff to do, I said and waved at Inko, and Izuku closed the door while Izuku opened what looked like a fresh notebook. So were you able to talk to her? He asked me while I was petting her head. Yup. I was never able to do it before, so I'm kinda excited to see if I can talk to Aki, I said, grinning, and 𝗧𝗏 whistled happily at me. I think every time you get a new form you get a new ability, Izuku started to mutter, making me and 𝗧𝗏 sigh, and the bird flew on top of his head and pecked his head, causing him to stop muttering and look at me. Our little friend here has a quirk that allows her to use the sun and moon's energy to boost her own. If she uses enough of that energy she could use fire and ice at the respected hour, I said, and he started jotting notes. Is that why she came home once with some burned feathers and a frozen tail? He turned to the bird who was now flying between us, and she nodded. When we arrived at my house I saw Aki laying on the couch, but when she saw me at the door she darted off the couch and booked it to the door, but when she saw 𝗧𝗏 she tilted her head, so I crouched down to Aki and held up 𝗧𝗏. Aki, this is 𝗧𝗏, our new friend, and 𝗧𝗏, this is Aki, I said, placing the bird on the floor, and the puppy tilted her head and liked the bird's head. Seems like your two will get along. Great, I said, looking at Izuku who was petting the pooch's head, and sat down in the floor, and I decided to sit down too. So how are we going to train her if only one of us understand her? Izuku looked at 𝗧𝗏 and she whistled at him. Well, I guess I could transform and try to use my area to my advantage and get a flying form, I said, looking at 𝗧𝗏 who pet her head to the side. What do you mean? Izuku asked, confused, looking between me and his bird. I then brought some familiar papers to me with psychic well from the BLD work results. It says my quirk has stockpiled a special energy through my veins that will adapt my form or body to any problem and change my form to help me, and after I unlock it the form will stay with me or fuse to make new ones. The weird thing is, if a person's body can't handle my quirk it will fight back and hurt the user. I was lucky that my quirk was compatible with my body, I said, reading the paper and showing Izuku, who looked at me confused. So basically if you were drowning your quirk would save you? Or if someone copied your quirk it would possibly kill the person? He asked, and I nodded. That's about correct, but I'm guessing some stuff will unlock as my body grows. I have a feeling that we both will understand it sooner or later, I said to him. So basically you want 𝗧𝗏 to drop you from a high place and see if your quirk would save you? He asked, and I nodded. This would be dangerous to do without safety precautions, so unless you have one I'm going to have to say no, he said, looking at me. Lucky for you, I do have a trampoline in the backyard, I said, grinning, and got up and skipped to the backyard, making Izuku rush after me along with 𝗧𝗏, while Aki just laid down and went to sleep. When we got into the backyard I looked up at the sky and 𝗧𝗏 started to fly around to get used to the area. This is the backyard where Eri plays at with Aki, I said while checking the trampoline in case anything was loose, and nothing was loose. I looked over to Izuku. So are you gonna stop me? I asked him, smiling. Well, since I'm here, no, plus if anything happens Izawa-sensei is right beside us, he said, looking at me. Well, if this works then I should be able to fly, so wish me luck, I said, transforming into EV form, and 𝗧𝗏 flew down and picked me up gently in her talons. So how high do we need to go? She asked me while flying up. I don't know, just go a little bit higher, I said, looking down. We were probably around 60 feet in the air right now, and I had a fail-safe so I was safe in case something went wrong. Okay 𝗧𝗏, you can drop me now, I said, and the cockatiel nodded and let go. So now I was dropping and I saw the bird diving beside me. Before I was 30 feet in the air I was covered in a familiar blue aura, and I felt my body grow and my ears flopped back and my tail got longer. I also felt something appear on my back, forehead and chest. Then I noticed my paws had gotten something around them. I don't own the art. When the light bursted I took immediate action and tried to flap my newfound wings, but I noticed I was slowly gliding down. When I landed I looked at my paws to see little clouds and light blue fur. I looked up to see Izuku running over. Hanami, are you feeling okay? Any dizziness or anything out of the ordinary? He asked while petting my head. I didn't feel weird, so I shook my head and rubbed my head against his hand. Well, now we know that your quirk does save you, so can you transform back? He asked while 𝗧𝗵𝗃 perched on a branch. I focused on my white fluffy self, and as I felt myself get smaller and my wings disappeared. When I finished that, I focused on my human body and transformed back. Well, that was exciting, I said, looking at Izuku, who looked at me like I was crazy. I swear you're gonna give me a heart attack one day, he said, looking at me, and kissed my forehead, making my face heat up, and I heard my phone go off, so I checked it and Izuku just peeked over my shoulder. Received from Momo. Insert picture of them kissing and of her in the wedding dress. So you wanna explain these pictures Eri sent me? Sent to Momo. Can I say no? Received from Momo. No, you may not so explain. Sent to Momo. Well, Eri asked us if we wanted to play a game with her and I couldn't say no, so she made me wear a wedding dress that she somehow got a hold of and put Izuku in a suit, then made us play wedding with her. Received from Momo. So are you both dating yet? Sent to Momo. Thumbs up grinning face with big eyes. I'm right beside him, so gee, I put my phone us, and Izuku laughed while 𝗧𝗵𝗃 flew off, probably back to Izuku's room because she was tired. Well, seems like you're gonna be teased for a while, he said, grinning. One thing I didn't needs, I said with a gloomy aura, and I felt Izuku pat my head and I started purring, and then he start to rub my ears. Izu, if you keep rubbing my ears I'm going to just plop down on you and not move, I said while he just shrugged while picked me up and walked inside. Well, if you do I don't mind, so it will be fine puppy, he said, sitting on the couch with me in his lap. Izu, how about we change into our pajamas and then go lay down in a bed and not the couch, it's almost 8 o'clock, I said while he nodded. Just go change. Want me to wait in your room after I change? He asked while pulling some pajamas out of his bag, and I nodded. Yeah, I'm gonna go change. I got up and walked to my room. When I got to my room I went into my closet, and since I trust Izuku, so I just put on my favorite oversized hoodie that was half white and half black. It had a giant light blue peace sign with monarch butterflies on the peace sign. When I finished braiding my hair so it didn't tangle in my sleep, I walked out to see Izuku sitting on my bed dressed in dark green long sleeve and black briefs. Izu, I'm tired, I whined and jumped on top of him, knocking him down. Well then let's lay down and go to sleep. Since Eri is at Sensei's house we can sleep in during the morning, he said, laying down on the bed pulling me on top of him. I guess we could, I said, and snuggled into his chest. We cuddled for a while and eventually I fell asleep while getting my ears petted. This was a filler chapter because the students were off 2 days after the sports festival. Fun fact number 29. Eri knew that they only kissed on the cheek the first time, but she let it slide. Fun fact number 30. Hitoshi actually looked up what a priest would say during a wedding just to make Eri happy.